Hello, this is the Stories Beside channel. I release videos every day for you. Subscribe and click the bell.
Harry dialed Emily's number for the umpteenth time, but to no avail. She didn't answer. She'd promised to let him know when she got there, and not a peep. How could this be? Well, yes, his beloved was never distinguished by neatness and commitment, but in such a situation, he even called the airport. The plane he'd put Emily and her friend on had flown on schedule, landed safely, and after that, both girls had seemed to vanish. Neither one of them answered their cell phones. He didn't want to let his beloved go on this trip. He persuaded her to wait for his vacation and then fly together. But no, alone in a foreign country, because anything could happen. He rushed around the apartment for the second day, dialing Emily's number, then Emily, then her friend, but the answer was silence. Why do you keep looking for the fifth corner? At least go eat a proper meal. His mom called him irritated. How do you not understand? I'm worried. If something happened? The son replied. I see. It happened. The girls went out. What's so surprising? It was their first time out. What have they seen here but their shop? Not to mention their town. Well, they've gone out, and they're right to enjoy themselves. Why do you say that, Mother? Harry was snapping at me. Why should a man be suspected of every mortal sin? Who's talking about sins? I'm talking about going out in the ordinary sense. Sightseeing, swimming, sunbathing. It's all new, it's all different. It's not up to you, and rightly so. Let Emily have her fun. She'll be calmer from now on. They say that he who has not had a good time in his youth will go mad in his old age. Do you want that? Don't you know any other way of things? Does a man have to go out, either in his youth or in his old age? You don't know of any that don't go out at all. Harry was irritated, anxious, and then his mother said such things instead of calming him down. Of course she hadn't liked Emily or Mary either, from the beginning, but that wasn't a reason to talk down to people. I know all about it. I never went out much. I never had time. And I'm not that kind of person, but things happen. Ethan in the front yard, he married his Kathy right out of high school. Everything seemed fine. In 20 years already had a second child, but in 40 she got a rash under her tail and went on a bender so that she forgot her husband and children. It's good that at 40, the children are already adults, but it can be worse. We have such a Clara at work. She told about her sister-in-law. You could listen to stories about Mom's friends and their relatives all day and night, but Harry was sick enough. What did he care about someone's sister-in-law? When his favorite girl disappeared somewhere, and where? In Turkey. They remembered the horror stories they'd heard somewhere about girls who'd been kidnapped and sold into slavery. It was Mary who confused her, dragged her off to some unknown place. In some ways, his mother was right. It was necessary to send this friend away at once, literally forbid to communicate with her. He thought, knowing perfectly well that it was useless to forbid Emily anything. They had met almost a year ago in the store where Emily worked, not in a store, but in a big supermarket. Harry had gone in there to get groceries and saw the girl arranging something else on the shelves. The way she did it, her actions reminded him of some kind of music, as if she were playing a harp, as if she were performing some kind of dance. Every movement was full of such grace, he could hardly take his eyes off the chiseled figure, which was not hidden by the ridiculous uniform. A glance at the face, and he realized he was lost. There are times when a girl's figure is beautiful, but her face is so bad. It can be the other way around, and her face was perfect, at least to Harry. He couldn't pass her by, so he went up to her and said, "How cleverly do you do that?" And he was surprised at his own determination. He'd never tried to meet a girl on the street or in a store. Of course, the girls he had 25 years old, there were, but they were former classmates, fellow students, that is, those with whom to get acquainted specifically was not necessary. Experience. The stranger replied cheerfully, turning to Harry and lighting him up with her smile. And you live near here, I suppose? I've seen you before. Crazy. She had seen him and even remembered him. How could he have missed her? Yeah, I used to come into this store a lot. Yes, I'm in the next block. I come here, but why haven't I seen you? That's impossible. You can't be missed. Harry was really impressed. I'm not always in the store. Sometimes I'm at the cash register, and there's a lot of them. Emily, stop talking. You'll earn your remarks. Threw a woman running past. Oh, sorry. Harry realized. He took a jar from the shelf, pretended to look at it, and talked to the girl about the goods. Are you guys so strict around here? What time do you work till? At 10 I finish, at 11 I leave, from the other side, and the service entrance. Without looking, said the girl, and turned around again, suddenly winked with a slightly slanted green eye. We really can't talk during work. I'll meet you, said Harry. Tossed the can into the basket and headed for the checkout. Emily, then, is my one and only. He thought and had no other thoughts. It was only 4 o'clock in the afternoon, but he was ready to take a watch at the service exit, or better yet, to stand there in the store, watching Emily, guarding her from other men's gazes. But he had to take the groceries home, and it was ridiculous to be on the street or in the store in case they took him for a thief and Emily for a fool. No, he's an adult. He should behave like a grown-up, serious man. At home, Mom, sorting out the shopping, was surprised. Where are the carrots? He didn't buy any greens. What's the butter for? We have it. I'd asked you to buy chicken, but you bought some half-finished products. What should I do with them? You didn't buy rice either. And why did you buy sprat and tomato? Twirling the same can in her hands, the woman was annoyed. What am I going to make dinner out of? Your sprat. Mom, I really like sprat and tomato. Today I'll eat it for lunch. I don't need anything else. I'm sorry. Do you want me to go again? For the chicken and everything else? No, thanks. Sending you is a waste of time. I gave you the list. You're so stupid. But Harry wasn't listening. He went to his room and threw himself on the couch, holding the jar in his hands, which were touching Emily's hand, and lay there with a blissful smile, waiting for the time to pass. Peeking in the door, Mom, of course, guessed it. It was clear. He's in love. And what kind of sprat do you like? Tell me, please. Not a sprat, Mom, but the best girl. I'll introduce you soon, and soon we'll be married. That's how it is, and send them to the store, and instead of buying everything on the list, they will fall in love with a sprat and lie with it in their arms. The woman grumbled and went to the kitchen. Miranda, not that she was very worried about this behavior of her son. A grown man, what can I say? It was high time he fell in love and got married. But what kind of sweetheart did he find at the store? That store-bought dating never does any good. A friend of mine went to the store, and a man saw her, and they got married. How many years has he been tormented with her? And by the way, she's got a bride for her son, Abigail, a wonderful girl, beautiful and smart, a co-worker's daughter. Miranda's known her since she was a kid, just like the rest of the family, lovely family. But no, he went to this store, and who knows how this acquaintance will turn out. And it turned out that Harry met Emily after work. Alas, she did not come out alone, but with her friend, Mary, who was probably a pretty girl too, but who disliked him because she prevented him and Emily from really getting to know each other. But Mary apparently felt it was unnecessary and quickly left them alone together. "And thank you for that. You must be tired," Harry asked, introducing himself. "No, I'm very energetic," she answered cheerfully. "And anyway, let's be on a first-name basis. We're not at a reception." The girl's cheerful mood relaxed Harry, and together they walked to her house, chatting casually. The young man learned that Emily, like her friend, came from a small town. They wanted to enter somewhere, but failed, so they had to get a job in a store. "We didn't want to go home with nothing, but we didn't want to go home at all. There's nothing much to do there. We want to achieve something more, so in a year we'll probably prepare better and go to school. Or we'll figure something else out. We're not going to put the cans away until we retire. And we live in this house. We're renting a 2-person apartment on the 2nd floor. You see Mary's home. Why don't you come in?" "Harry, I'd love to come in, but Mary's there, and she's a chatty girl, so we can't be alone together." He didn't want to be alone with Emily, but he didn't think of anything intimate. No, he just wanted to be near her, to talk about everything, to learn more and more about her. "Why don't we go and just sit somewhere?" Harry suggested. "I'm coming from work, and I need to get changed and clean up, and then it'll be too late, because I'm working tomorrow. But the day after tomorrow I'm off, then we'll go out, okay?" So they began to meet on weekends, and when Emily worked, Harry, who worked until 6, met her in the evenings from work, always with flowers with some small but nice gift. Soon the guy already on Emily's rights, as a young man, unashamedly visited their rented apartment with Mary, and the girl herself invited to his place. Emily's acquaintance with Miranda also took place. Oh, the potential mother-in-law didn't like her son's girlfriend, and not because she had another bride in mind for Harry. Not because Emily had any conspicuous flaws. She just didn't like it, and that was all, but the woman didn't express her complaints to her son. On the contrary, she praised the girl both in her eyes and behind her eyes, in conversation with Harry and her friends. "Wonderful girl, and beautiful and modest, lives far from home, and does not hang around. Behaves decently, works officially, well, just fine. She still found one physical flaw in her favorite son, but she told not him about it, but her friend on the phone." Harry overheard his mom saying, "Yes, she is beautiful, but I look at people's hands first of all, and they are not beautiful. The palm is wide, the fingers are thick, short, some kind of claws, not hands." Harry heard him, but only grinned. He didn't think Emily's hands were ugly, but rather childlike, touching. Miranda did not give up trying to change her son's mind, but decided to act stealthily. She praised her son's choice and admired the girl's beauty, but she kept telling stories about her sons, allegedly her friends and coworkers. "Vanessa, what's going on at home? Her son was so clever and handsome, but he married a guest from some village. She had a baby, and then she got a divorce. Now she wants to take half the apartment from them, and she was such a nice girl, such a sweetheart." Harry was well aware of the implication. "Mother, Emily, and I haven't married yet. We haven't had children, so we're not going to divorce. Besides, she's not from the country, but from the city, a resort, by the way, where any apartment is more expensive than ours. I'm not saying anything about your Emily. I'm just telling you about what's going on at work. You and I have to talk about something. But what do we talk about? Not soccer, especially since you're not interested in it, but you could be interested in your beloved's relatives. That's very important too. How is it important? How could I possibly be interested in her relatives?" Harry was both amused and annoyed by such talk, but Emma wasn't interested either. She married someone who didn't remember her kinship, and now she's been offered a good job, and there are questionnaires and checks. and it turns out that this husband's entire family has been in prison 5 times, and now Emma will not see a good job. How's that for a turnaround? I don't like these turns. Emily had no one in jail, and she herself had no jail time, no lawsuits, and no apartments taken away from anyone. Leave me alone with your friends and their kids. Harry was already angry, in fact, and he didn't know much about his beloved's parents. He just wasn't interested. From her fragmentary phrases, he realized that her relations with her parents were rather complicated, and that upset the girl, and if that was so, then why bother with questions? As if they had nothing else to talk about still, as it was. Every meeting with Emily was a real holiday. She was so positive, so cheerful, so able to lift his spirits. If Harry feared anything, it was that someone would intercept. He had such happiness. Still, she works among people, every day in front of many men, but Emily did not give any reason for jealousy. On the contrary, it seemed that she was afraid of losing her boyfriend. This really raised the self-esteem of the young man, who had never considered himself such a dream for any girl. He wasn't trying to bribe the girl, to pay her financially for her attention, not at all. He saw that Emily was not the least bit self-serving. Yes, he was a well-to-do man, earning good money, but he had never heard the slightest hint of even the most trifling gifts from Emily. He himself was happy to give her gifts, genuinely pleased with her admiration and gratitude. Harry himself did not notice that his savings began to melt like sugar in boiling water. He did not skimp on expensive clothes for his beloved, nor on jewelry. When by Christmas the guy wanted to please Emily with a new branded handbag, and of course, not an empty one, he, after counting the money, realized that there was simply not enough money for a model worthy of his beloved. He had to turn to Miranda. "Mammy, can you lend me some money for a while?" "What's wrong?" The mother was even frightened when she heard the amount of money she was talking about. "You used to have money, didn't you?" "Where did it go?" "I had some and it surfaced, but I'll have more soon. Don't worry, I'll close a lucrative project soon." "Then what?" "Your Emily will be back, sucking you dry like a vacuum cleaner." "Mom, don't. Emily has never asked me for a dime. If you're sorry, don't give it to me. I'll find someone else to borrow it from, but it's not worth it to slander someone for nothing." "I'll give you the money." "I'll give you the money, of course, but think what you're doing. You are going to get married." "With what money?" "You'll have to buy everything for the bride and the celebration itself. The wedding will be in the spring. I'll still have time to earn so much." "Don't worry, please. I've never robbed you." Yes, they planned the wedding for spring, because they had not yet applied for it, and there was no engagement, but Harry was already sure that he would get the consent, and the ring for that day had already been bought. It had cost a lot of money, but he couldn't tell his mother about it. Christmas was celebrated, and Emily was delighted with the gift. At the end of February, Harry finally proposed to her, got her consent, and very soon after this momentous event, Emily said that she was terribly tired of winter, frost, eternal darkness, and wanted to rest in Turkey. Harry was surprised at this statement. "How come without me?" "I have a vacation in April, and we planned the wedding for April. Then we'd go on a wedding trip together." "How are you going to go alone?" "Why alone? With Mary, she's on vacation too. Can you trust her with me? We're going for a couple of weeks, so we'll make it a honeymoon trip, like a bachelorette party or something." "I don't know what you're worried about." "You don't trust me, do you?" "Why wouldn't I trust you?" "I'm just scared for you. I don't know what's going on. But isn't it true that sometimes these things happen to single girls?" "No, I'm not letting you go. Let Mary go alone if she wants to." "What are you talking about?" Anything can happen at home, and the ceiling can fall on your head. For the first time since we met, Emily sounded annoyed. And anyway, I'm not asking your permission. I'm informing you. That's why I'm going now, before we get married. Otherwise, as soon as I become a wife, you won't let me go anywhere. Mary's already gone to get a trip, and now you're starting all of a sudden. You want to hurt my feelings before you leave. Harry didn't want that at all, and realizing that his beloved was going anyway, he decided that he shouldn't spoil her vacation. She was really tired, exhausted for the winter. Let her rest, sunbathe, gain strength and new impressions. And now Emily and Mary had gone away, and for the third day there was no news from them. How can this be? I mean, she knows I'm worried. At least send me a text to say everything's okay. I don't need anything else. If she comes, I'll give her a hard time. What if she doesn't? After a week of not knowing, Harry decided that something should be done because 2 people were missing. But first he decided to go to Emily's work. Maybe some bad news had gotten there that hadn't reached him for some reason. There, in the personnel department, he was given some strange information. On vacation? No, they both quit their jobs, got full pay, said they weren't coming back. I'm surprised you don't know. You're Emily's fiancé, aren't you? I must have misunderstood something, Harry muttered, and went to the house where the girls rented an apartment. The door was open, and some people were dragging tools and materials into the apartment. They were the owners, who said that Mary and Emily had paid them off and had moved out. And who are you to them? The landlady, an elderly woman, asked. No one, an acquaintance, Harry replied. He realized that he really became, or maybe he was his Emily, a nobody. His mother, seeing her son's suffering, at first seemed to sympathize, comforted him, said that if something had happened, he would have been informed long ago, and then began to laugh. Well, has your sprat gone to the warm seas? Oh, son, I told you that these store acquaintances do not lead to anything good. I've been sitting on your neck for almost a year, pulling from you. All right, she didn't. You gave her gifts. And you gave her not a trifle. You dressed her, put her shoes on, hung her with gold. Who would refuse? You never gave your mother a silver ring in your whole life? Come on, I'm not scolding. You'd better keep quiet. My son was losing it. Don't rub it in. Something must have happened. I think she found a richer patron, that's all. Maybe she went to her village, or where she's from. Maybe she lives in the next street. When you meet her with another man on her arm, then you can ask her what's going on. And I don't put salt on it, I put green oil on it. It'll sting at first, but it'll heal your soul wound quicker. Harry understood that his mother was right in some respects. He really knew nothing about his beloved and the one he wanted to tie his life with. Where was she from? Where were her relatives? Although if he had known, what would have changed? Well, he would have come, saw that she was not there, so what? Even if I had met her, I would have heard an indifferent answer. Would that make it any easier? What can you do? You have to move on. Miranda didn't hide her joy at the disappearance of her unwanted daughter-in-law. Cheer up, son. It's certainly a godsend. It would be much worse if you got married, had children, and she disappeared. And so, well, a year wasted and all right, forget it and wait for your happiness. It will not pass by. It was a little inspiring. Except that at the word happiness, Emily's sweet face came to mind, her cheerful laughter. Would he never see her again, his dear bride? Who could replace this girl? Who could not be better? And then my mother had a birthday, not an anniversary, because she immediately said that she would not organize a big party. Only her sister and her husband, her late father, her brother and his wife, and a couple of friends. And you and me, just 8 people, nothing special. We'll sit for a while and that's all, just to meet. We haven't seen each other for a long time. Instead of a couple of friends, only one came, but with her daughter, Abigail. Harry was already a little familiar with this girl. That is, his mom persistently wanted him to meet, and preferably marry, her daughter's girlfriend. He liked her a little, but not enough to marry her, and compared to Emily, Abigail was a loser, though she wasn't a bad-looking girl. She was very pretty, but her pretty head with its doll's face, its baby face, was crowned by a too fat body. Yes, she was such a nice fat girl, simple-minded, trusting, very homely. It is said of such people from childhood that they will be good masters, but did Harry need that? He needed Emily, fun, quick, unpredictable, and loving. And this Abigail, what? Yes, a good hostess. She's probably good at making soup. But loving? No, she hardly knows what that is. At table, of course, he was seated next to Abigail, told to look after her, and Harry dutifully offered her various dishes, served her bread, napkins. He did not know what to talk to her about, so they said nothing to each other except thank you and please. Then the men decided to go out on the balcony to smoke, and Abigail's mother suddenly jerked, obviously pushing her daughter under the table with her foot and making some significant grimaces. Abigail realized, "Oh, Miranda, I'm so grateful to you. Such a lovely evening, but I have a headache. Mom, should I go home?" "I wanted to talk more. What's your hurry?" Her mother was upset. "I can walk home alone. It's not far. It's late. It's getting dark. So I'll walk. I'd love to walk too," said Harry. He and Abigail went out of the house. He was about to go to his car, but the girl held him back. "Don't. You've been drinking." "I'd love to walk. It's such a beautiful evening. I'd love to get some air." And her hand slipped under the young man's elbow. "I'd love to walk too." Harry smiled, looking at that hand, unexpectedly very beautiful, white, with smooth skin, long, thin fingers and sharp, manicured nails, not at all like Emily, but Abigail was the opposite of his favorite. Well, if Emily was Emily, why not Abigail? We should get married anyway. It's high time she got married. Our mothers have married us off long ago, and we shall be a decent couple, and what's the matter? I've had love before, and I'll never have anything like that. It was uncomfortable to keep silent, so he decided to talk to Abigail a little. "You're probably just tired of sitting at this boring party, among people who are not old?" he asked with a smile. "Why not?" Abigail replied eagerly. "Your mother organized everything so well, and it's not so old that it's boring. It's just that I've got a bit of a headache." "Do you do anything fun without your mom? You know, companies, friends, clubs," and immediately regretted his question. It's clear that Abigail is a homebody. "What kind of clubs?" And indeed, the girl mixed. "Well, with friends occasionally sit somewhere, although no, that I will lie. Not really. I go somewhere and with someone to have fun, but I do not need it and do not need. I love my home. I love to read, watch movies, do crafts. I'm boring, aren't I?" "Why not?" Harry exclaimed quite sincerely. "Not at all. You're the right Abigail, the right kind of woman for life, for happiness, for family. I suppose that's what a woman should be. It would be worse if you were 25 and running around dancing. I'm already 26. Abigail sighed. "And no family. Maybe because I didn't go dancing, where would I have met? I work in a women's collective at school. At the institute there were mostly girls. They are all married already, have children, so with me they have no time to meet and no need. But sometimes I'm jealous." The girl spoke without a tear, without any bitterness, just telling me. Harry thought that she was not capable of strong emotions, and perhaps that was her good fortune. It's just that my mom keeps trying to fix me up. Abigail grinned. Here's to you too. I realize my mom's been hinting for a while that you'd be a better choice. Why don't we just humor our moms and get married? I said it and I was scared. What if she said yes? No, I mean, she's a good girl. Maybe she's the best option, but what if Emily comes back? Abigail, as if reading his thoughts, grinned. Aren't you afraid I'll say yes? I'm not going to say no, but I don't want to do it on the fly. I need to think about it, to talk, to get to know each other a little. Isn't that right? And if you change your mind tonight, I won't remind you, don't worry. I'll just consider it a joke. Here's my house. I'm not inviting you over. I'll come back later, okay? In the meantime, you can call me if you want to talk. You're right, Abigail. You're so right. I'll definitely call, and we'll talk about everything else. Obviously, we're not going to register the marriage right away. That was the end of it. Harry did not go home at once. He decided to take a walk along the street, to wait for the guests to leave, to avoid questions, hints, and advice from older companions who had lived their lives and knew better. It was better to walk alone, to think without interference. About whom? About Emily, of course. He forgot about Abigail as soon as he said goodbye to her. He thought about his missing lover all the time and was horrified that Emily herself would never know, nor would she want to know how he'd lived all those months. And he'd lived like that, thinking about her all the time. Not about why or where she'd disappeared to, but just so he wouldn't see her, no matter who he talked to. His first thought was always to tell Emily. And now, too, as if he saw her in front of him and asked her mentally, "You'll come back and I'll be married. What then?" And she seemed to answer, laughing, "What's what? You'll be divorced, that's what." He came home when the guests had gone, and his mother was doing the dishes, and when she heard her son open the door, she came running out of the kitchen, asking him questions. "What took you so long, Harry? Did you see Abigail off? What did they talk about? Did you go to their house? I saw Abigail off. We talked about personal things, but I didn't go to her place." Harry gave a short report. "Oh, well, what did we talk about? Why can't you say a word to your mother? Miranda was upset. I'm curious. I've been dreaming about it for so long. What is it? What were we supposed to agree on in half an hour?" "We just talked, agreed that we'd call each other, and then we'd see. We haven't planned a wedding yet. It's a little early, isn't it?" "Well, of course, we should talk first. Although he's not young anymore, it's about time. Don't take too long. To be honest, I dream about it day and night, about your wedding. You will live with us. We have a bigger apartment." Miranda began to outline her plans. "Mom, no one's thinking about getting married yet. What are you talking about? I don't understand." Harry really didn't understand why his mother was so eager to marry him. It was quite simple. "Or are you waiting for that sprat of yours? Well, I'm afraid the devils will bring it, and they will. Who needs it in the Emirates, or wherever it is? They're gonna get mad, and they're gonna kick your Emily out. And tell me, son dear, will you really accept her after all this? Don't you have any self-respect? I won't let her on my doorstep, and I'll bequeath this apartment to my nephews." "No, Mom, that's impossible. Why are you running ahead of the locomotive? No one gets married, no one comes back, no one dies. And you." And so they went to their rooms, dissatisfied with each other. But from that day on, Harry and Abigail began to see each other quite often. At first, it was the young man who took the initiative. He realized that it would be difficult for Abigail to be the first to call, to invite to meetings, and without it all communication could stall. But for some reason he didn't want that, because it was interesting to communicate with Abigail, and in general, it was calm and reliable with her. They spent the summer beautifully, going to the country on weekends, swimming and sunbathing, picking berries, talking about everything in the world. Abigail didn't have to think about where to find money for another gift or some expensive entertainment. She didn't like restaurants or clubs. Everything was simple, homely, and Harry felt that was exactly what he was missing. Then Miranda announced that it was Abigail's mom's birthday and they should definitely go. Harry didn't think of refusing, especially since he had his own views on the day. He figured that if it wasn't Emily, who cared who was around? Abigail was not the worst option. He'd bought a ring beforehand, certainly not as fancy and expensive as the one he'd gotten for Emily, but not because he didn't think Abigail was worthy. He just realized that money should be saved, and in the middle of the celebration he asked for the floor, got down on his knee, and asked Abigail to become his wife. To the applause and joyful tears of both moms, the consent was received. The wedding was performed, and they began to live together in Harry and Miranda's apartment. The mother gave the young couple 2 rooms, and she herself took the smallest. There was no adjustment of character between the young people. From the first day, they began to live peacefully and quietly, as if they had been married long ago and knew everything about each other. "I can't get enough of you." I was Miranda. "All my acquaintances complain about their children and daughters-in-law. They have one thing wrong or another. But you are just like Dobes. We are like old landlords, all the talk about what to buy, what to cook, but at best, what movie to watch in the evening, and we are not even 30 yet. How many years to live like this, from breakfast to dinner, from work to home, from home to work? Yes, you can call it stability, but you can also call it green longing. Saved from this routine, memories of her, of Emily, with her would be a completely different life. Soon, and in the measured existence of the young family, came a change. Abigail announced that she was pregnant. This was a great joy, but also a source of great anxiety for everyone, both for the future parents and grandmothers, especially since the pregnancy was quite complicated, and at the ultrasound it turned out that Abigail was carrying twins. It was a happy expectation of a miracle. 2 new people were to appear in the world at once. Harry felt truly happy for the first time in a long time, an established adult man. He loved his Abigail, who had given him such happiness, and was prepared to give him 2 children. And then the children were born, a boy and a girl. While Abigail and the children were in the maternity hospital, the relatives were choosing names. For some reason, everyone was expecting 2 boys, but now they had to think of a name for a girl. They thought it would be Ethan and John. "Why don't we make her Kathy?" "Oh no, my grandmother was Kathy. Very hard luck. How about Lucy?" Miranda suggested. "No, I don't like it. It's a heavy name. Lucy has a difficult personality. How about Lisa?" "Well, you're the dad. Why don't you say something?" suggested. "We went to Harry." He almost said the only woman's name dear to him, Emily, but he bit his tongue in time. As a result, the children were named Jordan and Olivia. Beautiful names, wonderful children. The choice of names, the purchase of the children's dowry, the equipment of the nursery, in all this Harry took a very active part. I feel like the father of the family. And then, finally, Abigail and the children were discharged, and his role was suddenly the last. Life revolved around the twins, who needed a lot of attention. No one had time for the father of the family. No, Harry, an adult and sensible man, was far from resenting his wife, and even less jealous of her children. It was just that life had changed unrecognizably. Now he cooked his own breakfast in the morning. His wife slept, exhausted after a sleepless night with the children. Gone were the morning conversations, which, as it turned out, set the tone for the coming day. Gone were the family lunches, the mainstay of their life together, the dinners that relieved the day's tension. What was? There was this. Your shirt. Look in the closet. No? Well, wear the same one you wore yesterday. It's clean. You eat in the kitchen. There's something in the pot. Heat it yourself. I have to feed the kids. You're finally here. Why are you so late from work? I have to go to the clinic with the kids. Don't take your shoes off. Let's go together. And so on. Somehow I coughed. My wife and mother got worried. How did they freak out? Not at all like before. Here's a thermometer. Drink some decoction. Take some mixtures. Put on warm socks. No, not at all. Abigail was worried in a different way. Do you have a cold? Oh, stay away. Don't go past the nursery. Go to the bedroom and stay there. I won't come in, I'm sorry. I don't want the kids to get sick. Even without a cold, he was afraid to go near the children. God forbid you breathe out some adult germ on them. So that's it. He became an extra in his family. Not to talk to someone, not just sit next to someone and like to reproach no one. What else was missing? Not to complain that his wife gives too much time to the children, but it was dreary and lonely. The vacation was approaching, and Harry realized that it did not please him at all. Not having to go to work would be a joy, would it? At work, at least among people you can talk and joke. But at home, what? No one, in fact, does not refuse to communicate. They ask questions, are interested, but so out of politeness. They don't listen to the answers until the end, or run away to the children. The main thing was to see her, to hug her at least once more, and having given his friend his consent, he began to pack. The first thing to do was to report back home. Harry didn't worry much about how Abigail would react to his message. He suspected she wouldn't. Maybe she would be relieved. He decided not to delay the conversation, especially since he was leaving soon. In the evening, when the children were asleep in their room and Abigail was ironing the children's clothes in the kitchen, he asked her bluntly, Abigail, do you think I should go on vacation for a couple of weeks? Would you be okay with that? Abigail, not raising her eyes from the delicate rags she was stacking, said a little surprised, What's there to be offended about? You're on vacation, and you and I can't go yet. Go, of course. Where are you going? To Turkey. A coworker offered a trip for half price. It won't be too hard on the family budget. All the more reason. Go, of course, I'm not going to object. And Abigail, smiling brightly, looked at her husband. How do you know, if she had cried, rebuked him, discouraged him, resented him, maybe Harry would have refused. He loved Abigail and the children, and he didn't want to cause them any trouble. But if his departure wouldn't upset anyone, why not go? As it turned out, it would upset and alarm someone. Miranda heard the conversation between husband and wife. She did not interfere at once, did not comment on what was going on, but later she came upon her son. What are you up to, Harry? Furiously, she whispered to her son. What turkey? Abigail, so here to kill, and you go to warm your belly? But you two are here, and your mother comes almost every day. I don't have to do anything, and I'm really tired. When the children are older, I'll let Abigail go on vacation alone, and we'll manage here, won't we? You will, yes, even though you're not familiar with your own children now. Anyway, don't avert your eyes like I don't know why you want to go to Turkey. Didn't you get a message? But that's too much. I didn't get any news, Mother, and don't make up nonsense. Let's say Emily is in Turkey, but where in Turkey? I have no idea. You think I'm going to run all over the country looking for her? You would, and I assure you, it's a small world. So you have my word. Don't go anywhere, stay home with your wife and kids. What kind of vacations are vacations when the kids are small? It won't end well, you won't find Sprat, and you'll lose your family. Abigail, of course, is quiet, patient, but no patience is unlimited. His mother's words had no effect on Harry's decision. He still went on vacation with a friend. Yes, his mother was right. He had hoped to meet Emily, although he did not believe that it was possible. But the truth was for Miranda. The world was too small. When he checked into the hotel, Harry saw a girl of familiar appearance behind the desk. It wasn't Emily, but the face looked familiar, and he realized it was Mary, the friend his sweetheart had left with. He rushed to her, hoping to find out about Emily, but when she came to the counter, Harry couldn't resist. "Emily, is that you?" With joy and anguish, he said, approaching the girl. "Your papers." With a professional smile, said Emily, holding out her hand for his ticket, and with the same smile, without looking at him, said, as if continuing the business conversation, "You can't come here. Come here in 3 hours. I'll finish, then we'll talk." Everything was just as it was then, 3 years ago. Gasping with happiness, thought Harry, going to his room. And she was still as beautiful, light, cheerful, and loved to tears. Thoughts of Abigail, his mother, his children were gone. It was as if they did not exist in his life, as if he and Emily had parted recently, without having time to change something in their lives. The next 3 hours lasted endlessly. His companion tried to find out something, but Harry answered in vain, and he went to the beach alone, having achieved nothing. Harry, long before the appointed time, was already standing at the service exit, keeping his eyes on the door from which Emily was to appear. She came out, saw Harry, and flashed him her unique smile. Harry went up to the girl and put his arm around her. "Emily, darling, how I've missed you. How I missed you." The girl hugged him too. "I was always thinking about you," she whispered. Their embrace was not passionate or strong. It did not feel the heaviness of their bodies, as if two souls met in space and merged with each other. So they stood side by side in silence, as if conversing with thoughts and feelings. Then they separated. They looked into each other's eyes. "Why don't we go to a restaurant?" Harry suggested. "I don't care about restaurants." The girl dismissed him. "Let's go to your room, order dinner there." They ordered dinner and the next morning breakfast. They were so happy together that there was no time left even for the clarification of relations. Harry didn't want to disturb the union of souls by asking what had happened, why Emily hadn't come back, what she had been doing all this time. She hadn't asked much either, hadn't reacted in any way to the news of his marriage. Harry felt guilty himself. He tried to justify himself. "You were gone and I didn't care about anything. They told me to get married, so I did. How do you want me to come back now? You're married, you have kids, but divorce is still a thing." "Yeah, you know, it's the wife. She's so indifferent. I don't think she'll be upset. A divorce is a divorce. What's the big deal?" "What about the kids? I'll pay child support. I've been promoted. I think we'll have enough money to live on. Are you coming with me?" "No, it's not that quick. I have a contract. I have to work till the end of the season." "But don't worry, come on. I won't stay long. Think about it. What's there to do here? You think it's good to be alone all the time. Mary and I have already split up. She's got a boyfriend here. We live apart. We don't talk much. Emily, I swear you'll never regret coming back." They spent the whole week together, but when they were going back to the airport, Harry met his friend. "You had a lot of fun, I see," he said with a sneer, either with disapproval or envy. "What kind of a hottie did you get?" Former love? And present and future and forever. Harry replied with a distracted smile. Are you going to go on a date once a year? My friend asked. Why should I? She's coming. She promised to come back to the city. She has a season to finish. She has a contract. Harry explained. What about it? And the fact that you've got a family, you've forgotten about that, haven't you? His voice grew colder and colder. What's family got to do with it? There are such acts of civil law as divorce. Don't you know? Harry was already angry at his neighbor's words. I do, and I know what a pleasure it is to get divorced, but you. Think about it. You've got Abigail the Gold. What about this one? How did she end up in this hotel? Who cares where she works or how she got there? We love each other. She promised she'd come. And Abigail? What can I say? Yes, Abigail, Gold. And that's why I hope everything goes well with her, without too much scandal, without screaming, and without tears. Well, if it does, I feel sorry for Abigail. 2 kids after all, and here. Oh, stop it. What's wrong with you? I don't know. Stop shouting. It'll be all right. It'll be fine. The main thing for me is to get Emily here, and I'll take care of everything else. Everything else can be taken care of. Whatever you say, I don't think anyone's going to talk you out of it. It's up to you. Just you watch when you come to Abigail. Don't tell me that you've met love, about the divorce, all that stuff. Something tells me that such people don't always keep their word. Shook his head, Buddy. Bite your tongue, I beg you. He will keep his word, you'll see. But no matter how strong Harry's confidence in Emily's obligatory arrival was, his friend's words had a grip on his soul. He wondered what would happen if Emily really didn't come. They had called. The girl had said that yes, she was already going. There was a month, a week left to go, but the confidence was shattered. Harry doubted, and every day more and more, he was nervous, lost his appetite, slept badly, irritated, and Abigail as if she didn't notice anything. Her husband said nothing, and she, seeing his condition, offered some drops, decoction to calm his nerves, and only that. She wrote off Harry's mood after the vacation as nervous tension, and she herself was quietly rejoicing at his arrival, telling him about the news, mostly about the children. Sometimes only he caught her testing glance, but he kept silent. Indeed, why upset her before her time? Miranda, on the other hand, could not be deceived. She saw the mood in which her son had returned and guessed the reasons for the change. At first she kept silent, but then, left alone with Harry, she asked him if he had seen his sprat. How is she doing? She's probably coming to visit. Mom, please, whether she's coming or not, whether she's seen or not, let's not talk about it. My son turned away. I'd love to never know anything about her at all, but thanks to you. Anyway, it's up to you. But I beg you not to upset Abigail. After all, she is your wife, your children's mother. You can't change her for this one. Think about it. How are you going to live if you tell Abigail now and break her heart? Remember, I'm on her side, on Abigail's side, and I don't want to know you if you ever mess with that pest again. I ain't gonna break nobody's heart, and I ain't gonna tell nobody nothing. There's nothing to tell, Mom. Stop it, please. It hurts to hear everything you say. Harry was hurt by the fact that no one believed in his beloved, that mate, that Mom. Everyone was sure that Emily wasn't coming, that she had spun around again and given up. And he was sure that she would definitely come. There was nothing left to do but hold back, not saying anything yet to Abigail, who had become even more of a stranger after he'd passed 2 weeks next to the one that seemed to have been made for him. 2 days before the season ended, Emily's phone went silent. She didn't answer calls. She didn't answer texts, and then her phone was disconnected. She disappeared as if those 2 weeks had been some kind of dream, and they were, in fact, a dream. He just went on vacation, just met there the one without whom it is difficult to live, but you can, and you can even happily. His children are growing up. His wife loves him. His mother, however, sometimes looks at him the same testing, and sometimes even mockingly. That's what is funny to her. The fact that the son did not work out with the woman he loved, that's how she knows that it did not work out, because Emily may well show up. Harry argued mentally with those around him. The season had passed, the next season had begun and ended, and there had been no word from his beloved. Life was gradually returning to its normal course, and even the memory of Emily seemed to be fading, though it had not completely disappeared. Could he forget the one on whom so much of his life depended? The one who had shone a bright star on a gray, humdrum life. How much I have learned since I met Emily, learned what love is, and what betrayal is, what pain is. And also during this time, had time to get married, to become a father, to learn what is not love. Learn to live without love, only with responsibilities. How hard can it be? But nothing is harder than being separated from Emily. Will she never, ever be in my life again? I can't bear it, I promise you. The unhappy man in love suffered. He knew perfectly well that he would survive. He had already survived it once, and this time he would manage somehow, and perhaps he would meet her again, and maybe even more than once. Christmas was approaching, the first such holiday for children who were about to turn a year old. They decided to celebrate it at Abigail's mother's house. She was ill and couldn't come, so they couldn't leave her alone for the holidays. First thing in the morning, Harry took his wife and mother and children to his mother-in-law's house and returned home to grab some dishes they had prepared, but did not take at once. Left alone in the empty apartment, he sat down by the table, pulled out his cell phone. A couple of miracles, if fairy tales and soap operas were to be believed. No word from Emily, of course. She hadn't answered her phone in months, and she wouldn't now. She could have at least texted for the holiday. Congratulations, happiness in your personal life, but no. Why don't you dial her number yourself? So Harry decided to do it, and he did. Oh my gosh! The phone was answered. The world's most precious voice answered. Hello, Harry, is that you? Who else, Emily? Where are you, tell me? I can't go on without you. I'll go mad without you, understand? He shouted, almost sobbing with happiness. And I'm here, I'm in town. Harry, why don't we meet? I'm staying at a hotel now. I've got a room. As if nothing had happened, Emily said. Tell me the address. I'll be there in a minute, please, but don't disappear again. I'll be right there. My darling, my only one. Forgetting that they were waiting for him at his mother-in-law's house, that he had to bring some more salads, Harry jumped out of the apartment to run, drive, fly to meet his beloved. At some point, though, he pulled out his phone, quickly typed a message, and sent it to his wife. It's all right. Don't wait, urgent business. How Abigail would understand these words, he was not interested. Let her understand as she wants or understand nothing. That was not the main thing for him now. He was on his way to meet the woman he loved, the only one in his life, and they would never part again. He would never let go of his Emily, and his hands were shaking so much that he couldn't write anything else to Abigail, but he wanted to write everything, that they were getting divorced, and that he loved someone else. He didn't write, but fine, it was all the same. Why write, we'll have to meet again and say everything in person, and then her mother will tell her if she doesn't understand something. All right, Emily is here. She's not in Turkey anymore, she's at home here. and now I will not let her go anywhere, never and for no reason. He thought, hurrying to Emily's room. Everything would be different now. Everything would be different, just the way he wanted it to be, just as long as she didn't go anywhere else. Emily opened the door for him, still as fresh, beautiful, loved. "Emily, I beg you, tell me, what do you want? What are you missing?" "Anything. Just don't disappear again. Don't ever disappear. I'll do anything for you. Do you believe me?" From the doorway he shouted. Emily was silent and slightly bowed her head, looking at Harry with a smile in which perhaps there was deceit and betrayal, but there was also love, and for that, anything could be forgiven. "Come on, Harry. New Year's Eve is coming. Let's celebrate it properly, shall we?" Without answering, the girl said. Her gaze, the sound of her favorite voice was freezing. Harry hugged his beloved, kissed her, felt her kiss back. Only close to midnight did he come to his senses, edge of consciousness. Harry heard his phone ringing. He realized that his family was worried, hurt, perhaps angry with him, but what did it matter when he was near his beloved? Absolutely none, and there was nothing to answer him, not to his mother, not to his wife. "Oh, Harry, it'll be Christmas soon. Let's order dinner, champagne, something else. It's a holiday. You can't just sit around all night. It's good not to sit around, but we won't be satisfied with love alone." The menu was next to the phone. They ordered what they needed. "I wish that we would never part." Harry made a wish, piously believing it would come true. It was unknown what Emily had wished for, but they spent the night together and were happier than ever. Harry's phone rang a few more times, then went silent, and the next day the fairy tale began to crumble. Emily informed him that she had to go back to Istanbul. "Why?" "Don't go, darling, but I'm telling you, I can't live without you." "Please stay, but not forever, not until spring." "I can't stay, Harry. I've been offered a job there that I'll never get here, and I'll never get money like that. So there's no way I can stay, you know. I love you. I need you. But I'm sorry. Why don't you come to my place?" "I'll come, but I have a job here, and what will I do there? Begging? Sit on your neck? Okay, I'll think of something. I'll talk to you. We'll find you a job." Emily spoke coldly, businesslike. "Pack your things. Look, my whole life is out there right now, and my life is you. I can't stay without you, Emily. I can't live without you. Please stay." Harry begged. "My darling, my only one." The girl softened. "I'm sorry, but I can't go back to the store. I can't rent an apartment here. I can't stand this cold. I can't live without sunshine for 6 months. I can't even do it for you, you know. That's why I'm telling you to get your affairs in order and come back." "Emily, I haven't given up hope, Harry." "Well, Emily, all you think about is yourself. Can't you live?" "I was getting angry, Emily. You've had a great life. You've married and had children, and your career's on the upswing, and now you want to have a mistress at your fingertips? That's convenient, and how I'm going to live my life doesn't interest you. I'm telling you I'll get divorced, we'll live together. You won't work at all, but you didn't get divorced, and you share the apartment with your mother, and I won't live with her. And from your paycheck, deduct child support for the 2 kids, your wife, and maybe your mother. What's left for the 2 of us? Harry, don't hold me up. I'm gonna miss my plane. You can walk me out if you want, but without the wailing." Harry drove his beloved to the airport. He was so depressed that not that wailing, words could not say. At least don't disappear, stay in touch. That's all he asked. "I'll think of something, I'll be there. We'll be together, I promise." Emily promised not to disappear, said goodbye and left, as if vanishing into thin air. It was time for Harry to go home to his family, and he didn't know how to explain his act. What his wife and mother would say was irrelevant. Emily had left. That's what was terrible, and all the others were still there. They wouldn't go anywhere. They'd blow up, and that was it. Emily's gone. That's the trouble. And what these people will say or do, who cares? I won't even resist. Harry thought with a grim grin. Miranda was the first to arrive. "Merry Christmas," she said dryly. "What are you going to tell me about your adventures?" "I won't tell you anything, Mom." Harry sank tiredly onto the bench in the hallway. "You can make something up if you want to." "I haven't made anything up, and I don't want to tell the truth." "Is Abigail in?" "Well, it doesn't take a genius imagination. It's clear without your explanation." "Abigail, you say? Where else would she be? Or were you hoping she'd gone?" "I wasn't hoping for anything." "Let's not talk about it. I'm exhausted, really." "Poor guy, he's exhausted. Are you going to sit in the hallway?" "Well, sit there. What can I do?" Her mother went to her room, and Abigail came out of their bedroom, pale, puffy-eyed, with a drooping face. Harry felt an acute pang of pity for his wife, a sense of irredeemable guilt for her. "Abigail, I'm sorry." He slid off the bench, knelt, and tried to grab Abigail's hand. "I'm sorry. I don't know how it happened." "Don't." She pulled Abigail's hand away. "I don't need anything else. I don't have time." And left for the kitchen without even glancing at her kneeling, bowed husband. He sighed, got up, wandered into the room. Well, everything at home seems to have turned out all right. The mother, of course, expressed her ewe, but even in a lighter form than one might have feared. The wife, but apparently decided to kill with contempt, which is also not the worst option. The pity and guilt somehow subsided. Abigail, to all appearances, didn't really care, that is, when he didn't come and didn't answer his calls. She was probably worried, concerned. Maybe she tried on the role of a widow, but now her husband is back. He is alive, healthy, at home, so everything is normal. If she were really dissatisfied, that is, insulted, offended, killed by his actions, would have left, would have filed for divorce. Well, or scandal raised a real scandal, with breaking dishes, tears, violent explanations, and this, nothing else is not necessary. Well, do not need and please, he is also not going to explain or apologize for the rest of his life. He will live and live as before, waiting for his beloved. He won't disappear for the third time. It didn't work out so well before Christmas. Mostly because of his mother, who looked at her son with contempt, pressed her lips together, refused to eat with everyone, and hissed something judgmental. Abigail also withdrew at first, talking little, that is, almost never communicated with Harry at all. It was hard to live in such an environment, especially since there was such an icing of relatives on Christmas vacation. Even at work, there was no escape from such a harsh atmosphere. If the women wanted to punish Harry in this way, and to get some special apology from him, they miscalculated. The more his wife and mother turned away from him, the further he himself became estranged from them. He liked walking, though the weather was not favorable for it, but he was sick of sitting at home. Besides, there was always the possibility that Emily would call, and he would not talk to her in front of his own people. But she did not call, and she answered Harry's calls very seldom, referring to her work, but she did answer, and was so affectionate, so sweet in these short conversations. That's what a real woman should be like, and for me it was Emily who was perfect. And Abigail, what? She's a fish, she doesn't live, and she won't let me. I should get a divorce and go to Istanbul to my one and only, already a free man. He thought so, but he did not do anything yet, and did not even talk to his wife about divorce. It's not that he was afraid, it's just that he had 2 one-year-old children. Do they divorce people like that? In any case, there will be talk, and here all is conspired to praise Abigail. That is, she and before everyone loved her, talking about what she is nice good, but somehow it was not conspicuous. But now you stick your nose out the door, and some neighbor girl will jump in like a tick. How's Abigail? She's so wonderful. When I see her, I'm in such a good mood. Well, God bless her. Say hello. I went to work, same song. How's your wife? You're lucky. You found the perfect wife. It's like someone's got everyone talking about Abigail. Well, you should have had her. Harry thought with annoyance. Who'd want her with 2 kids? She wasn't much use to anyone without them. Not only did the constant talk about Abigail spoil his mood, but also the fact that Emily wasn't calling him, and she was answering his calls less and less often. The conversations were getting shorter, and in the background I kept hearing music, cheerful voices. Was our reunion being delayed for a reason? If they intercept my Emily, what then? I had to make a decision. I was also constrained by the fact that there was not much money, at least for the first time they were necessary, and then we'll see. It was unbearable to keep everything inside, but there was no one to talk to. Only Mason, a close friend, he dared to say everything that had boiled up in his soul. Mason lived alone, in a rather large apartment, left by his parents, and Harry at one time even had a desire to rent a room from him, to live separately from his own, but did not dare. Mason was his own man in their house, had been friends with Miranda for a long time, and even seemed to have a fondness for Abigail. He never showed it, though. He was always correct, remembering that she was his friend's wife, but he couldn't bear it now. So Harry decided to pour out his soul to his only friend. I've put the car on sale, and I can get a lot for it, but I have some savings left. I'm going to Istanbul. I can't go on without her, my Emily. Are you crazy? What about your family? Mason was surprised. What about family, Mason? I am superfluous there, in my present condition, you know. I can't look at my mother or my wife. Even my children are a burden. Yeah, well, I'm sorry. That's just the way it is. What am I supposed to forgive? I'm not judging you, but you're doing something bad. Aren't you ashamed? I'm ashamed, but not ashamed because I'm sad. I can't go on living like this. Harry was sure he was right. Then why did you get married? To have kids. How will you look them in the eyes later? Mason realized that he couldn't talk his friend out of it, but he felt so sorry for Abigail and the babies. I think they'll understand. Anyway, when they grow up, I'll tell them this: never give up on your love. Never settle for less. That may be the best advice they'll ever get. However you get it. No, Harry, I'm not moralizing to you. I'm not a priest. I'm not a teacher. If you want to go, go. I just want to say one thing. Are you sure you're not going to blow it with your love again? How many times has your Emily deceived you? Not again, I hope. And you know, Mason, her deception is worth more to me than any right. And you really don't have to lecture me. I'm not hurting anyone. The kids are young, and Abigail doesn't seem to care if I'm here or not. Look, if you want to go, go, but don't get too cheap. No, I do business with reliable people. They won't cheat. Harry left without understanding his friend's words, without heeding his advice. Mason thought gloomily about how lucky some people were, and how the lucky ones did not appreciate their good fortune. Why should he have such luck, he asked. The love of the best woman, who gave birth to 2 wonderful children, and he breaks away and goes where? To some hussy who doesn't want to know him. Yes, Mason had a thing for Abigail, but she was the wife of an old friend, therefore unavailable under any circumstances. And now, even if Harry doesn't get divorced, which he won't, he would come to Istanbul, see what the beautiful Emily was doing there, and return home with nothing. And Abigail would probably take him in. Harry started packing at home, not really thinking about what he would say to his wife. Mumbled something about a business trip. "Is that so?" said Abigail. "For how long? But how do I know how things will work out? I'll text you or call you. If things go well and the business trip lasts longer, can I consider myself a free woman?" "What are you talking about?" Harry asked unhappily. Was Abigail starting to realize something? "Do you still think I'm a homely clod who can't see beyond diapers and pots and pans? But the truth is, I see and I understand. I know you married me while loving someone else. I thought a life together would make a difference, but you're leaving, you're disappearing. How long do I have to put up with this? I know you sold the car knowing you weren't going on any business trips. Who put that in your ear? Your mother, I suppose, or some of the sympathizers who feel sorry for Saint Abigail. Well, listen to them, listen to them. No one blows me anything, on the contrary, everyone tries to assure me that you are a wonderful husband and family man, and you would be like that if it weren't for all this. I understand everything, even why you're lying to me, why you won't come clean and divorce me." Abigail's voice sounded sad, but without tears. She was not going to cry or make a scandal. "And why is that?" Harry asked. "It's very simple. You don't know how your favorite woman will take you. Maybe it will not work out with her, and then you can safely return home, where you will always be waiting for a plate of food and your own woman in bed. Don't be silly. I'm traveling for work, no women. Stop making up nonsense. I'll go and come back. I don't know how long I'll be there. And don't get on my nerves. I want to leave before my mother gets back, or she'll start giving me a hard time. Go on, there's no hurry to get home." Abigail grinned. Harry really didn't delay, took his things, kissed his children, kissed his wife on the cheek, and left without waiting for his mother. He was glad of such good fortune. Miranda would not have been delicate, would have said everything she thought about his business trips, or maybe she'd try to keep her son. That's what she told her daughter-in-law when she got home from work. "What do you mean he's gone?" "Where? Why? What business trips? Why did you let him go, Abigail?" "What could I do?" "Lie across the door? Get down on my feet?" "I still have my dignity. I put up with it because I loved him and hoped he'd love me back, but I guess he didn't. I'll file for divorce, and in the meantime, I'll probably move in with my kids. What are you doing? Why would you do that?" Now Miranda was ready to lay across the door, terrified. "What will I do without you, without grandchildren? What are you doing? My son's away. I don't know if he'll be back. Are you going to leave too?" "No, Abigail, don't leave me." The women hugged each other and decided not to part. Abigail was left to live with her mother-in-law. They had been on the best of terms from the first, and Harry's behavior did not affect it at all. Of course, it wasn't easy for them. Both of them were tied up with taking care of children who had already started walking and were very restless. Neither Miranda nor Abigail had a car, and neither had a license, so they sometimes resorted to the help of Mason, who, after the departure of a friend and the news that Abigail filed for divorce, began to visit them, to provide the necessary assistance, to play with the children, whom he sincerely loved. He was in no hurry to explain himself to Abigail, for he feared that she was still suffering because of Harry's deed, from whom he had heard very little and no news of any substance. Harry arrived in Istanbul and went straight to the hotel where Emily, according to her, worked at the information desk. On the day he checked in, there was a different, unfamiliar girl at the desk who didn't answer any questions about Emily, but that didn't bother the young man very much because his beloved might have had a day off. However, she didn't show up the next day and the third. The hotel was luxurious, and it cost a lot to stay in it, and although Harry had money, it might run out, and he could not wait for new arrivals. After waiting for Emily to appear and despairing of seeing her, Harry decided to spend the evening in the bar, just to sit and drink, to get rid of his longing for Emily for a while. It was there, in this hot spot, that he saw his one and only half undress it. She was wriggling around a gleaming pole, stripping. She was as good as ever, but that wasn't what struck Harry. It was the sight of a dozen drunken men devouring her with their eyes, whistling, applauding, encouraging the girl to get rid of the rest of her toiletries. When Emily finished her dance, Harry moved toward her, but the road was blocked by two large security guards. It would be unwise to confront them. Harry decided to wait until the end of his beloved's work evening. He habitually took up his post at the service exit, hoping to intercept Emily. Staying in the hall, where she walked almost naked between the tables, exposed to everyone's lustful gaze, was unbearable. It was a long wait, but when Emily finally came out, Harry rushed to her. "My dear, are you here? I've come to see you." Emily, not expecting such a meeting, did not express much joy. "Yes, I'm here. Where did you come from?" "Why?" Unexpectedly, the girl was confused. "I told you I'd come. I can't do it without you. We'll always be together, won't we? I've left everyone, my mother, my wife, my children. I don't need anyone but you. And you, why are you in this bar?" He asked me in a confused way. "I dance here. I'm a stripper. Does that embarrass you?" Emily regained her fun, playful mood. "A stripper is not a prostitute. If that makes you uncomfortable, I'm not sleeping with anyone. We're not even allowed to have personal contact with visitors. And where are you staying?" "This hotel. Will you invite me to your place? I'm tired and hungry, to be honest. Dancing is a lot of work, but you can give it up if we're together, can't you?" "I'd do anything for you, anything to make you happy." "Well, we'll see if I should quit my job." Emily cheered as she made her way to Harry's room. "You've made some money, haven't you?" "Yeah, well, you've never been poor or greedy. I'm glad you came, honestly. I missed you. Always thinking about that crazy Christmas night. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Hugs, kisses later, place your order. Let's pick something not too heavy together. I have to watch my figure." Yes, Emily's figure was in perfect shape. She became even more slender, flexible, and her acrobatic caresses drove Harry crazy. He realized he could hardly go home to his wife and children. Finally, about his beloved, with the God-given woman herself, and let her be a stripper if she liked it. Let all the men look at her, drool and die of envy for the one she is alone with every day. And he, well, yes, he'll be jealous, but Emily is no Abigail. There'll never be peace with her. And someday they will come home, live as a family, and no one will stop them from being happy. The happiness lasted for 6 months, then Harry ran out of money, and with it his love for Emily. Harry began to hint that it would be a good idea to return home to a place where he could earn money and provide Emily with the lifestyle she needed. Back home. Back to you. My home is here, Harry. I've got work here. I've got money. I've got fame. And what's out there? But I told you, I'll work, I'll provide for you. With what? Vegetables to make soup, laundry detergent to wash your socks. You see, darling, I'm used to all this squalor. I can't stand the thought of this house. No, don't ask me. I'm never going back there. But what are we going to live on? I've got nothing left, and I can't get a job at my social status. So come back, Harry. They're waiting for you at home. You won't be homeless. You won't be unemployed. Don't go whining about how you can't do it without me, and you love me and all that. I've heard it, but I've never seen it done. Well, I've seen things that don't make a man look good. You betray your own too easily. Will you betray me too? Emily, if I betrayed, it was only for your sake, and to betray you, my beloved, how can you imagine such a thing? Exclaimed Harry, wringing his hands. I can imagine it very easily, darling. Yes, you sort of love me now, but only because I haven't turned into a pet chicken. The minute you see me in a kitchen apron and old slippers, you'll start looking for another ideal. Don't shake your head. That's just the way it's going to be. Emily waved her hands in the air. You won't walk around in slippers. We'll have a housekeeper, a cook, whatever you want, promised Harry. I was surprised at how pragmatic his beloved, who had seemed a model of carelessness and frivolity, had suddenly become. The housekeeper? I'd have to pick up her slippers, and you'd have to finish your lunches. How much is your salary? What's your alimony? What are we gonna use to rent an apartment? Or are you thinking of throwing your family out on the street? Or is your mommy gonna welcome me with open arms? Harry, come back here and get some perspective on real life. Emily, but what about then? What do we do, tell me? Harry felt a cold sweat run down his back. What kind of us? What kind of us? Wake up, there is no us. There's you with your problems and me with mine. I'm staying here because I don't see any other option. I suggest you go home and live a normal life. That seems to be the only option too. And mind you, darling, I make a good living, but I'm not going to support you. I haven't gotten to the point where I can pay men yet. It was the end of all hope. Harry still tried to persuade his beloved to leave, tried to find a way to stay in Turkey, but both these options were equally unrealizable. Realizing that he had no money left, only for the return trip, he began to pack, to Emily's great joy and relief. Don't you love me at all? Have you ever loved me? She asked him goodbye. I have. I loved a strong man who could do something, not a whiner begging for love. We had a wonderful time, we were happy, but I can't offer you anything else, I'm sorry. Harry flew home with a heavy heart, so heavy that he feared the plane would collapse under these reveries. He didn't know what he would say to his wife, how his mother would greet him. However, he cared little about that. He had parted from Emily, and probably forever. His hometown greeted him with overcast weather, a fine cold rain. It was as if nature, too, wanted to aggravate his despondency. He entered the apartment, empty and apparently for days. Where had everyone gone? Though it delayed an explanation, it was troubling. Dialed Abigail's number, no answer. The phone was either dead or turned off. Called my mom. Miranda answered right away, but her voice was so foreign and cold. Harry, where are you? I'm home, Mom. Where are you? Where's Abigail and the kids? Where did you all disappear to? We're not in the habit of disappearing. I'm in a sanitarium until the end of the month, and when I get back, I'd hate to have you home. Abigail? I don't know, but I don't think she'll be very happy to see you either. I'm sorry, I have to go to my treatments. Wow, his mother gave up on him. His wife probably didn't either. He didn't have his mother-in-law's number, nor did he want to go to her. Abigail might be there, but he didn't want to talk to her in front of witnesses. Neither did being in an empty apartment. He went out, wandering at first without purpose, but then he saw the house where Mason lived. He decided to visit his friend, to find out how things were going at work, And maybe he knew about the changes in his family. Turns out he did. Abigail and the kids were at Mason's house. It was a real family idyll. Mason and the kids were playing on the floor. Abigail was sitting next to him. Not many people paid much attention to Harry's appearance. "Abigail, I'm back. Why are you here?" he asked his wife. "Because I'm with Mason now." Calm as ever, Abigail replied. "I filed for divorce." You betrayed me?" Harry couldn't believe what was happening. "Consider it so, if it makes you feel better. Mason has been more of a father to our kids than you have been in 6 months. Go away, Harry. We don't want to see you." What was there to do? Harry came home without lighting a light, sat in the empty, uncozy, and cold room. That was it. The beloved abandoned, the mother turned away, the wife gone. What's left? Loneliness.
Subscribe and click the bell.
Vanessa. So with cabbage. Personally, I am wary of letting it on the menu because even if we subject vegetables to heat treatment, a number of microorganisms. Sam kept saying something about the cafe's current problems. But Vanessa heard him, but didn't listen. All her attention was magnetically drawn to a text message from an unknown number. "Your husband has a mistress?" That's what it said. They also had the address where the immoral lovebirds were to meet, as well as the scheduled time for the outrage. Vanessa darted a glance at the wall, where a large clock hung above the certificate of honor for the Golden Mitten contest. On their backing was a picture of Paris and lots of scarlet roses, a gaudy thing. But they bought them on a wedding trip when they were in the most romantic city on earth. And ever since then, Vanessa considered them as if they were her talisman. It was this watch that was with them always while she and her husband realized their dream. And according to the position of the hands of the clock, the next betrayal was about to take place. Exactly 55 minutes later, there was a nasty lump in the throat. My heart beat frequently and rhythmically in my nose. Fell as if Vanessa was about to childishly roar desperately and resentfully at the world. But she shyly clasped her hand tightly, so the nails with the fresh cherry manicure spun into her palm. She took a deep breath and with a low whistle, exhaled through her teeth calmly. So what happened? Finally, she turned her gaze and attention to Sam. The chief cook froze, clapping his eyes. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. "So the Brussels sprouts are all off-white and the corn is canned. The cans are deflated, so throw them away," nodded Vanessa, rising from behind the table of the head of the catering and grabbed the handbag standing on it. "And what about the menu? I can't buy new products at 6 o'clock somewhere. What am I supposed to do?" "You're a smart guy, Sam." Vanessa took her coat off the rack, grabbed her scarf, grabbed her gloves. "We'll be changing suppliers. That's a definite. Think of something. Change the menu for now. For the next few days, okay, at your discretion." She walked right past him. Out of the office came the young tomato chef. Mick followed her. "All tomorrow, close today on your own." "Okay, but you'll manage. It's not the first time. Get dressed by the greenhouse. It's early September. Walk to the parking lot belonging to the cafe and get in the car. Start the engine." Vanessa coolly drove forward to where she needed to go. But at the same time, she was hysterical and refused to believe that such a thing was possible. Or believe that cheating was possible. It was long overdue. And she was just blind, a fool, confident in the unshakable style of her feminine happiness. They'd known each other since high school. Vanessa had been in it since she was a freshman. Benjamin transferred after his parents traded in the apartment. There was some family intrigue over living space with relatives moving to another part of town. He was a donkey above everyone in the class, but he could not claim the status of a threat and a menace because he was still very thin. For which, by the way, the witty ones nicknamed him Skeleton. "Are you a goth?" Vanessa asked him once. She just had to make conversation with the new kid at recess. So she said the first thing that popped into her head. "It's just that you're always in black and your hair is long." "No," Benjamin replied. "Just black hair. It's my grandmother's. She says it's how a person keeps the earth's energy." "I see," said Vanessa, who actually had more questions about the novelties. By the will of the teacher, they found themselves at the same desk, and this also contributed to their bonding. Soon the classmates realized that Benjamin, despite its necessity, nothing. So the guy studied well, but did not give up and could even give a write-off. He did not mess with bullies, but no one touched him. Why? Benjamin just had, as the boys joked, a super ability to resolve any conflict with just one look. And they respected him when it became known that he had been working part-time since he was 14. So he has his own pocket money, mercifully given by his parents for good behavior. And slowly, by the last year of school, a small company of Vanessa, Benjamin, and Tony had formed. That redhead and glasses, you and Tony. Tony was a typical excellent student and literally a nerd because he was eager to study all the flora of the planet. He went abroad on some kind of grant after graduation. And for 6 years, he wrote long letters to his friends full of Latin names of fauna. He was studying, I think, shrubs in Mongolia or Brazil. But then it just kind of went to zero. He was a good kid, Tony. All we had to do now was reminisce about a former friend. And then there was Nancy, a good girl, and there seemed to be nothing more to say about her because she was, well, such a good girl, she studied roughly. But the teachers sometimes grumbled, saying, well, somebody's in charge of the scholastics, and she doesn't take anything from her own head. She was always neatly combed, clean, dressed Monday, sundresses, water, caress on Tuesday abdominal suit. Wednesday, sundress and caress again. Thursday, skirt and blouse. Friday, dresses with old-fashioned all-yellow fifth lace collars. Yes, Nancy dressed for school clearly on schedule and never took compote or scones or anything sweet at all to the canteen. Sugar, the white death, she explained. One day, her resistance to the treat. I don't want to die. Young, I have a long and decent life ahead of me. Nancy never let anyone cheat and didn't talk much about herself. I mean, she did. But it sounded strange for a teenage girl, and even creepy. A decent person doesn't like pop music. He listens to classical music, respects opera. You have to live your life so you won't be ashamed in front of your great-grandfather. No, artists draw, children just dabble, and felt-tip pens are poisonous nonsense. They'll give birth to sick children. You should marry in such a way that you won't be ashamed in front of your grandmothers. That's the sort of thing Nancy used to say. When, for example, she was asked about her hobbies or why she was so glum in art class. Nancy once told Benjamin, who by senior year not only got a haircut, but started wearing jeans and t-shirts. Basically, he looked like a regular kid. You're not twice if you're in a cult. Is there something going on at home? Benjamin was being humorous, but the subtext was serious. He just had a personal adolescent confrontation with his grandmother, who was a generally nice woman, but with some weirdness. Granny had moved to her daughter in the city from the countryside, abandoning the household and the familiar world. To help raise her grandson, helped, hampered, took care of the pension, did not spare to help the young family, but was a little bit with oddities. But Benjamin still loved her very much. Graduation, by the way, remained in Vanessa's memory for many years as the most beautiful events in the world. To be more precise, its first half, because the second half became a nightmare. But that day began wonderfully. In the morning, a hairdresser came to their home, who built on the head of a young girl hairstyle worthy of Pompadour, as said the master of beauty herself. It was curls, and the curls were crunchy. And from how much they were drenched with lacquer, and it was all covered with roses and pearls. There was makeup too, and not a timid drop of lipstick and mascara, but the grown-up version with cream powder blush, and even black pencil. Mom, though, cautiously asked, isn't that a little much? For a 17-year-old girl from a high school gala. But the hairdresser, Aunt Jenna, stuck her tongue out, looked angry and shook a magazine that said, in big letters, Fashion from Hollywood itself. You want your daughter to be the prettiest, don't you? Aunt Jenna asked. I want her to be my happiest, Vanessa's mom sighed. But since she likes it so much herself, Vanessa's dress was a looker. Flux colors of natural silk with added synthetics, with a heart cut out, and even the sandals were gold. Daddy had set aside a generous amount from his paycheck for one thing for his daughter. In general, at the prom she felt like a real princess, catching admiring glances. But what really mattered to her was the attention of only one man, Benjamin. And when the solemn school part was over and the graduates went up to the ship, the main and all terribly expected part of the holiday was expected on the water, then Benjamin suddenly drew Vanessa to a secluded corner where he stood close, took her hands and, looking into her eyes, said, "In 3 months we will be 18 years old. Let's get married. I want to spend the rest of my life with you." It was that moment when Vanessa realized with delight that it was all over. Childhood was behind her, and here it was grown up, happy, incredible life opened its arms to her. She laughed, smiled at him, and told him she agreed. So they stood near the engine room in a secluded corner and gazed dreamily at each other. Nancy suddenly turned to Vanessa and saw her friend peering out of the corner. She was deathly pale and her face was twisted. Vanessa realized what was going on. Nancy repeated and rushed after the alumna, who ran to the upper deck. On the way, Nancy fell briskly to her knees, but didn't even seem to notice it. She caught up with her on the upper deck, where the tack and sway of the couple's dance was sounding. "Nancy, listen," Vanessa said. "We didn't mean to hurt you. And I love him, don't I?" She whispered back. Vanessa swallowed the words she still wanted to say. She had guessed that for a long time, hadn't she? It was hard not to decipher the glances Nancy was throwing at Benjamin. It was hard to ignore how already a bit wordy he was. The strange girl was starting to completely stutter and muddle her words when he appeared next to her. Except Vanessa seemed like it wasn't all serious. What kind of love? Nancy had it all she knew exactly. There was no relationship. Yeah, she didn't even hold hands with boys, much less ever have anything. There was no romance with Benjamin. And now Vanessa thought they were all getting along. They'd talk like friends. She would explain how things with Benjamin were real. And Nancy would understand, even be happy for her. How could she not? And she'll be her maid of honor at the wedding. And Nancy will find happiness. Not with Benjamin. A senior called out to them. "Don't get too close to the boards. Those fences are a little flimsy. It's not a ship at all, but a trough." He muttered and went to the table with appetizers. But neither Nancy nor Vanessa paid any attention to his words. The sun shone at 6 o'clock, hidden first behind a wood pearl of gray clouds, and then hid behind a truly freight cloud. The wind came in rough gusts. The surface of the river merged in waves. "I loved him, I always have," exclaimed Nancy and clasped her hands. "Listen, Vanessa." It was unpleasant that their scandal might be at the center of the general celebration. She moved closer to Nancy, wanted to take her somewhere where she could talk without strangers. "You've got it all wrong. Benjamin and I are serious. Nancy, let's have a quiet, calm conversation." Nancy, "Okay. Who would ever think that you and Benjamin could have anything? Because I'm not as pretty and smart and straight a student as you." The girl snapped. Her face creased ugly. She ran her hand over her face, smearing her lipstick. Yes, this day Nancy changed her habits and painted her lips a piercing scarlet color. "I hate you," shouted out, and she, stepping back, clutching her back to the side of the ship. "Traitor. I thought we were friends." The other students were starting to look back at them already. Nancy stopped the hysterics, snapped back at Vanessa. "You and Benjamin have never even been on a date. What makes you think he has?" Vanessa didn't have time to finish, because suddenly there was a prolonged scraping of metal. Everything happened so fast that no one had time to do anything. All that was left was to watch in horror. Here Nancy staggered, leaning backward again. Ridiculously, she waved her arms. And the next instant, the segments of the fence, the deck of the ship simply broke off and flew down into the dark waves of the river, on which the early summer storm was already playing fiercely, and Nancy flew after it with a desperate shriek. Naturally, there was a commotion. Someone threw a life preserver overboard. The captain came running. People were screaming and pointing their fingers in the water. It was a terrible accident. And coincidentally, it didn't end well. And yet it didn't end as nightmarishly as it could have. The thing was that the ship was just passing by a shoal, on which the volume of the shoal was a few Nancy downstream, exactly in my typical doll literally nailed her shoal. But it so happened that the girl was just dragged through a sunken tree, and there was still some junk iron, sharp rocks. Anyway, Nancy survived, but by the time she was rescued, she was badly injured. Word got out to last night's graduates. Slipped into a coma, and the ugliness on her face and body. Fractures open, scars that would last a lifetime. Vanessa was in shock. She felt so guilty. After all, if it hadn't been for their fight, Nancy would certainly have been more careful and not fallen overboard, but she hadn't had the chance to say anything to her friend. To apologize to her because Nancy's parents, as soon as their daughter's condition allowed it, had taken her away and moved to another town. Why? Well, I guess that's what they decided for some reason. Yeah, it was all just awful. But Vanessa did not have a chance to swim long in the consequences of what had happened, because life went on after all. Vanessa, it was time to take care of her future. And it wasn't easy. The thing was that her family wanted her daughter to become a lawyer. Vanessa had nothing against law, but her soul lay to something else. She wanted to be a chef. It so happened that since childhood she loved to cook, her mother and grandmother and great-grandmother. And in general, the whole female part of the family admired and praised. After all, rarely a girl of 12 years can cook a full lunch or dinner for the whole family, and even herself tears constantly let, say, to the stove. But then, in general, admiration diminished when they realized that Vanessa decided to connect her fate with it. How so? How so, dear, serious practice? Prospects may even have their own law practice, but Vanessa was lucky with her folks. They grumbled, lamented the unfulfilled great hopes, but supported in the gastronomic dream. And Nancy enrolled as a chef, not in a technical school, but in a university. Her family paid for her studies and supported her in every possible way. Relations with Benjamin meanwhile developed smoothly, harmoniously, exactly according to the romantic scenario prescribed in advance. They met afterwards after the university, moved in together, so to speak, to live together. But it was clear to everyone that it was going to be a wedding. And the wedding was played, as it should be, with a white dress, doves, cake, shouts of bitterness, and a wedding trip to Paris for a week. Benjamin, by the way, decided to become a lawyer, and this partly consoled the family of his wife, who decided that okay, although take and manage to realize partly collective ambitions and dreams. Vanessa more than once said friends and colleagues that she is simply happy. Life goes on quietly, prosperously. There is income. The mortgage was taken and paid off ahead of schedule, but it seemed to Vanessa that she would give up everything in the world if her life came to her. The main thing that was missing to make her really happy, and the thing was that she could not get pregnant. Doctors' examinations, expensive clinics, and even attempts to echo, and then trips to remote villages to heal her Baucus, it was all useless. It was almost physical. It was painful to see off moms with strollers with an envious look in the street. How many times Vanessa had a dream. She is perky in the arms of babies on 6 blankets, and he is her greatest treasure in the whole world. And then the merciless awakening hit, and she was flooding her pillow with tears. Benjamin, too, was crushed, without the density of their marriage. And what's most frustrating is that the doctors said it was as if both couples were healthy, but it wasn't working. You see, human biology, his nature is a unique thing, divorced one old man, a professor, to whom they went to counseling. Modern science believes that sometimes strong and full man and woman are not able to have children because of, so to speak, individual genetic incompatibility. And so when everything was tested, when everything became clear, Benjamin and Vanessa found themselves faced with a choice. What to do next? After all, it was clear that theoretically, if each of them tried to build another family, there would probably and almost certainly be children there. Maybe we should just get a divorce. Vanessa once asked on the day this shower conversation took place. They were celebrating their 9th wedding anniversary. We could stay friends. She turned to her husband and shared any other words. That's how he looked at her. Don't ever talk about divorce again, he said. You love me and I love you. Since there are no children, it's fate. but we are married and only death will separate us. Remember, and they never talked about divorce again. And what of relatives and friends, even the closest ones, except mom and dad and those people who could be trusted? Anyway, they were the only ones who knew the whole truth. The rest of us thought it was just each spouse being infertile. On their 15th wedding anniversary, Benjamin, when all the guests had left, gave his wife another gift. "What's this?" she asked. When she opened the gift paper rustling in the night, she found a puffy folder with some documents. "Something you've been dreaming of for so long," smiled her husband. "I thought it was time for us to take a decisive step and change everything in our lives." Vanessa, raising an eyebrow in surprise, opened the folder and aghast almost dropped it. Because there were estimates and all other documentation related to the opening of their own cafe. Yes, a long time ago, back on their wedding trip, they had talked about it, but jokingly. So one day they said they'd open their own place. "I've inquired," Benjamin added. "We've been pre-approved for a loan to open a business. I've already looked at the premises. My favorite, I found out everything." He concluded shocked. "We'll pull the wife into our arms, we can handle it. What do you say?" Vanessa then cried long and loud. She was crying, she was barely able to cry, she was hiccuping with tears. But they were tears of joy. She'd been dreaming for so long. Yes, she kept putting it off. And her husband, her favorite man, took it and did it. Took all the decisive steps, and now it remained only to agree to risk everything with him for the sake of their common dream. Relatives and friends perceived the business project of the spouses ambiguously. Some praised, saying, "Keep it up. Go ahead. You'll become millionaires." Some of them twisted their fingers at the temple. After all, they decided to take a loan against the security of the apartment. And it was also required, by the way, to leave a stable job and go into open water. When it is known how many novice businessmen are soon disappointed in their ideas and remain, as they say, without pants. But Benjamin and Vanessa did not listen to anyone. They were stubbornly determined and boldly acted. They decided that they would not open either a flashy restaurant or a refined coffee shop, where people come for authors' drinks. They decided that they wanted to open an institution with homemade, tasty, simple and inexpensive cuisine, which, however, would not be a banal canteen, but an institution with its own zest. And how many difficulties came to light when you went from plans to reality? Sleepless nights risking losing your business and your apartment. Trying to guess which dishes people would like. One time they even had strange wigs and leather jackets stop by. Honestly, it was like a time machine from the 90s. There was something more about the roof. But Benjamin threatened them. That he's a lawyer, he's got big connections, and he's going to show them how to play the mafia. And those weird-looking checks never showed up again. And then, after a few years that seemed to fly by like a day, the couple realized they'd made it. They have their own cafe canteen, which has firmly established itself in the city's catering market and has its own clientele. Benjamin and Vanessa, although there was at some point such an opportunity, decided not to expand. Of course, opening new cafes of their own chain would have increased their income, but it would have forced them to attract outsiders to the top of the business. This would not have allowed to keep such a close eye on everything, to participate in all spheres of life of their brainchild. So they left it the way it was, and everything was fine. The family business was doing well. It would seem that what else is needed? But Vanessa had already accepted the fact that they wouldn't have children. All right, let it be. So it was indeed fate. But lately, in the last year, she suddenly began to notice how they were drifting apart. No, there were no fights, no scandals. But a coldness had crept into their marriage imperceptibly, just as a night frost can suddenly engulf a garden. Although the day before had been the most similar, but Vanessa had shrugged it off for the time being. Come to think of it, less socializing, not kissing in the morning and not talking as often as before. I love you. After all, they're not young people anymore. They've been married for years. It's only natural. And then the stresses of business, when you barely have time to eat and take sleeping pills to sleep a wink. It's also a reason not to drown in the body, a sneeze of tenderness. With the other half, it was only that stupid contest. for which Benjamin obviously did not apply from a great mind, and Vanessa still did not find time to take it off. Anyway, it just seemed like married life was going on. They lived like normal people, nothing nightmarish, nothing to get hysterical about. But now, as Vanessa drove the car through the evening streets, she realized no, there were alarm bells. Yes, she was stupid and naive and had ignored them. Like the fact that her husband had been on the phone with someone a couple times and then abruptly ended the conversation when she walked into the room. Your husband has a mistress. The text of the text message seemed to be imprinted in fiery letters in her brain, and Vanessa, letting out a low groan, slammed her fists on the king in frustration. Av almost lost her grip on the steering wheel with both hands and bit her lip. She couldn't yet figure out what she was going to do when she didn't. Not the time for that right now, she just needed to figure it out, to make sure it was true. And so here she was, Velvet Restaurant. The text said they'd chosen the summer veranda, that it was their usual spot. Good evening. Grew up in front of Vanessa, a smiling girl, a waitress, but she only waved her off and walked resolutely forward. Many establishments still kept summer verandas. This one offered guests cozy plaids and used tiny lamps imitating antique lanterns as lighting on the tables. Vanessa noted with a professional eye the well-chosen palette of the interior and the unobtrusive music playing in the background. She walked forward without feeling her feet. There was the familiar back of her head in front of her sitting in a chair, and a woman sitting next to her. She spotted her before Benjamin did and turned around. Vanessa stopped abruptly, as if she had hit an invisible barrier. Her eyes darkened. She exhaled 3 breaths, recognizing her rival. "Oh, Sam, I thought you were stuck in there until morning." Kate winked at the guy and boldly but innocently took him under her arm in a friendly manner. Just had to check things out well. "There are all sorts of things that happen," Sam said, squinting at his companion with embarrassment. Kate was 8 years younger than him. Barely 18 was this red-headed doll who must be out of her petite nether regions. She barely reached the top of his shoulder. She also reminded him of Kate because of her playful directness. Kate had been working as a waitress at Caesars for 3 months now. She'd gotten the job in a very unusual way. She just came in and said she wanted to work there. Although, by the way, in the ad clearly said that you need a person with experience, ready for intensive loads. Running around on your feet all day with heavy trays. That's no joke. The interview was conducted by the owner herself. I mean Vanessa. And everyone was actually shocked that she hired the new girl. She wouldn't last a week, Molly said. A dishwasher who worked part-time at Caesars because her pension wasn't enough to live on. "She's embarrassing us," she rolled her eyes. Emily is a waitress with the figure and face of a model. I love every spare moment I have on my smartphone. Where she watched Turkish soap operas. Emily was very professional. She was tipped all the time. But sympathizing with the girl was hindered by her arrogance. She turned her nose up, saying that she was waiting for her Prince Charming and that he must be a millionaire. Such words were like a knife to Sam's heart, because he was in love with Emily a little bit. With a high level of unrequited love, and did not want Sam to notice at all the signs of attention that Kate was giving him. He perceived her no more than a little sister. Yeah, I guess that's what it was. Sam had always wished he had a little sister, or a family at all. He was an orphan. Once a long time ago, just a kid, he swore to himself that he would never repeat the path of his parents, who drank themselves to death. And when he got out, the freedom and will of adult life did not turn his head at all, no. The guy graduated from culinary school, managed to work on the pizza and sushi exchanges. Then he cooked for the culinary department of a large supermarket, and then taking the prize of audience sympathy. At the competition met with her, which at this competition took first place. And so by a happy accident, Sam began to work at Caesars, quickly working his way up from ordinary cook to chef and finally chef. Sam believed he was perhaps as compensation from the universe. For the bitter orphan childhood, he now lived a happy life. Everything was going well for him. If only there was still love in his life, but so far there was no love. He could devote himself entirely to professional affairs. And now Sam was proud that Benjamin, the owner of the place, had decided to take part in a new cooking competition. It was going to be a huge event. It was to be covered by both local and foreign press. And its uniqueness lay in the fact that it was to bring together the best catering establishments in the city. And the competition was not in something trivial, but in dessert. Sam believed, on such a space his bosses will go wild and will definitely win. And this victory, of course, will strengthen Keezer's position in the catering industry. After all, the competitors are not slumbering. Only in the last 6 months on the same street opened 2 establishments. In general, it was necessary to move in order not to go bankrupt. And the more offensive was Sam, when he learned that she, it turns out, considers the idea of the competition is a complete nonsense, and even scolded her husband for this. What does Keezer's have to do with an institution with average and even modest cynic, where they serve unpretentious dishes, and a contest for professional pastry chefs, for elite-class establishments? What we're going to impress everyone with in a high-pitched tone. So everyone heard. Did Vanessa Zatia with apple pie or girlfriends, or maybe with seasonal berries? We're just gonna get laughed at. Sam, aren't you listening to me? He was pulled out of his musings. Katya's offended tone and a palpable nudge of her small elbow in the ribs. Excuse me. Pensive. Sam coughed. Nervously, the rain began to fall, and he opened his umbrella over them. Kate was a terrible stretch, and despite the wet weather forecast, the umbrella was not with him. I asked, seriously repeated Kate, and her voice trembled strangely. Maybe we can go somewhere this weekend to the movies. Can there be a new movie like this movie? And let's absent-mindedly answered Sam. About what a movie about love with a huff, replied Kate, and so shot his blue eyes at him, thinking that Sam understood, and he got caught. Trapped himself, but he blanched. He couldn't just say, like a fool, that he'd remembered something important for the weekend. He called himself a dick. And then, as they say, Sam sighed well. What movie theater are we going to? After all, he thought, it's only a movie, not a date. So he will not owe anything to the picture. But from now on, he'd have to keep his ear to the ground with this duck. Looks like it's not such a kitten. Kate never worked a day in her young life before coming to Caesar's. Why would she? If her mom provides everything she wants, if she's spoiled like a princess. But there was a downside to that. Rigid, strict control. The only thing she needed to complete the picture was a flood collar. Kate grew up without a father. No, there was one, of course, but he wasn't talked about in their family. Her mom used to tell the little girl when she asked if he was dead. But then, when she was 14, she learned the truth. Her mother had given birth to her from a donor, flown overseas, and there in the clinic everything happened. Simply because Nancy wanted a child so badly. But she didn't want to get married and have relationships with men. That she strictly forbade herself, and Kate realized very early on why. It was because Nancy had a big problem with her appearance. Her face from her left temple to her chin was crisscrossed with bumps and crooked scars on her neck and shoulders, as if red reformed flowers were blooming. The doctors said that for some reason, perhaps due to a hormonal disruption, the body was unable to fully repair the areas damaged in the accident. The skin was formed with thick pigment flecks. For this reason, Nancy never wore anything revealing. And if she had to leave the house, she stood in front of the mirror for long periods of time applying makeup. But it didn't hide the scars of her uneven face. Already at the age of 10, Kate knew grandparents and general native moms. They spent a lot to make her beautiful again. But the peculiarities of the body, its reaction to Lisa, they did not allow Nancy to fully visit plastic surgeons. After all, to somehow improve her appearance required surgery. And so at the family council, they decided that health was more important. And Nancy herself began to treat her peculiarities already philosophically. However, when Kate was little, she was still very offended that other children had fathers and she did not. "Mommy, you are my most beautiful," often said a simple-minded girl. "You should all love you? Let's find me a daddy. And you a husband." Sometimes Nancy would laugh at this. But more often she got very angry and told me not to talk nonsense. Later, in adolescence, when Kate was already beginning to realize herself as a person, she realized the whole nightmare her mother was living in. So, in principle, Kate allowed for the idea that even with physical disabilities, it was possible to love a person. But she also realized that the likelihood that her mother would meet such a spiritually rich man, for whom appearance is not the main thing, is extremely small. As for the mother-daughter relationship in general, it was good, but complicated. The fact was that Nancy firmly knew what was good for her daughter, and Kate thought it was completely stubborn teenage stubbornness that she knew better. The final straw that created the storm was her mother's words, which sounded like an order. That after school, Kate would go to a University of Economics and become a manager. I wanted to go to Africa to study animals. Kate objected, as if she were a child. Mom, I'm not going to make a good manager. I'll die of boredom. That's what, daughter? Nancy said sternly, as long as you live in my house and on my money, I'll decide what you do. And clearly, Nancy was used to commanding because she herself had worked in the personnel department of a large enterprise all her life and kept subordinates from small to large, not counting her direct superiors. That's what they call in a tight grip. But since Kate's character clearly went to the mother, and maybe in the mysterious father of the donor, the easy victory Nancy did not win, and the daughter simply hid her papers. So in the room she hid that her mother and grandparents could not find. Here announced Kotenko, folding her arms across her chest, and looking Volchok, I will not go to your university. No way, I'll go next year, wherever I decide. In the meantime, I'll live on my own money and pay for the utilities. Nancy only twisted her head and the next day blocked the card with which her daughter used to spend money. The grandmother said everyone wanted to give her a heart attack, and another day later gave her granddaughter one of her cards. I won't let my gold starve. Winked at Granny too. Grandpa kept neutral for a week and then said that love for animals is a sign of a good person, but not obedience to the will of parents. It's a sign of a rotten soul. So you have to look at it. What you're gonna make of yourself, he said. But if you don't fool around and seriously stick to your goal, I'll support you. And with such peripecias, a fake kitten found herself in the place of a waitress at Caesar's. The job, by the way, was harder than she imagined. But Kate, though Mykola, in the evenings was not going to quit. You repeated, Vanessa enchanted and was horrified, looking at the one she thought had disappeared from her life forever. Hi, said Nancy. It's been a while. She grinned. Do you want coffee? What? But how could you? Raised her voice to Vanessa. She was putting her finger on her husband. What a bastard. And I'm with her. So you were in love with her then. So you've had it between you for a long time. How long has it been between us that you're dumbfounded? Asked Benjamin. There must have been something in Vanessa's tone, because the small fairy tale company began to look around the cafe. My husband has a mistress. Muffled from Vanessa's lips. But why? She grimaced in disgust. Although it seemed obvious, a pang of disbelief glanced at the couple in front of her. Favorite. Benjamin, rising, took a step towards Vanessa. There is nothing between us. Vanessa's lips trembled at the traitorous tentacles in her nose. You expect me to believe you. Hang in there, man. An inebriated voice came from a neighboring table. Behind him, some guy was sitting with a girl in a short dress. Until the last one. Then they might believe it. Veja, are you crazy? His companion risked pulling his arm. Stop it, I'm ashamed of you. And you lied to me yourself. Eh? Vanessa didn't care that their conflict seemed to have worked like the first fallen domino knuckle, dragging someone around in a similar showdown. You can trust him, Nancy said. We're just dating. Ah, that's how Vanessa deftly turned away from her husband and slapped his outstretched hand. That's interesting. How so? Does that mean we're friends, and where do friendships take place in the bunkhouse? Should we call security? Whispered one waitress to another. What if they start trashing the place? I don't think they should. Whispered back the other seemingly decent people. Vanessa stood there and barely felt herself in reality. She was torn by contradictory feelings. On the one hand, a burning resentment and a willingness to send their marriage into tatters right now and throw the wedding ring in the traitor's face. On the other, a desperate longing to believe everything, even the outright lies. Let your spouse take you away from here and forget everything like a terrible dream. Vanessa sobs muzzle and often oversees vision behind the fog. Because the tears did rush from her eyes. Vanessa reached as through a layer of absorbent cotton to her the voice of her ex-girlfriend. There's nothing between us. He's telling the truth. And then Vanessa finally burst into hysterical sobs. She flopped down. Would have come out with her heel on the floor. But her husband gently grabbed her by the shoulders and sat her on a chair, brought her a glass of water. The waitress girl handed it to him. But I got a text. Vanessa was rambling. What's going on? Why are you two meeting in secret? Is it true? Is it not true? She asked, shifting her gaze from her ex-girlfriend to her husband and back again. It is, they both answered in unison. What place did you get? Nancy asked. And from whom? I don't know, shrugged Vanessa and took out her smartphone and put it on the table. Here's the message. Nancy and Benjamin leaned over the screen. I don't know that number, Benjamin muttered. This is some kind of evil joke. Nancy, what do you think? Oh, you little brat, Nancy exclaimed. And she struck the table with such force that the tiny vase of late herbarium bouquets, which had fallen to the floor, shattered. I'll pay, guiltily, turned Benjamin to the waiters, who had just been sighing calmly. But after the outburst from Nancy, they tensed up again. There was no way to get away from the dinner grandmother had prepared. And now, finding herself in her room, Kate from the table tone unbuttoned the leg of her jeans. Wistfully, thinking about the fact that she'd swallowed what must have been a week's worth of calories, no less. Good thing at least she was now spared lunch at Nana's, because she was eating lunch at work. That's for family, though. Kate said that she lunches there, and herself tried to limit herself to an offended yogurt or an apple, because she considered herself a half. Yes, weight versus BMI hinted that this was true. It was a magical evening. He and Sam went to the movies and sat in the back rows. He was crunching popcorn, drinking unhealthy soda, and she was looking more at him than at the screen. Kate was in love to the point of butterflies in her stomach, and genuinely thought it was real feelings. And the fact that she'd had such a crush before that was the real deal. What kind of romantic infatuation could there be in high school? Just a dalliance? They were boys who were shy. True, it may have been partly so that this grandmother and mother strictly controlled her social circle, not allowing her to hang out with boys who wouldn't be afraid to say at least on the eve of graduation. I fell in love, but what was what was. Now Kate considered herself a grown-up, practically an accomplished woman, and was ready to literally fight for her happiness. Since Sam was so uncomprehending, to think he hadn't even tried to kiss her for nothing. It turns out that she poured those expensive perfume from the elite brand, which promised, not according to advertising, to drive any man crazy. The next morning, Kate didn't have to go to work, a legitimate day off, and she was going to get some sleep and then go to the zoo. But the morning right after breakfast, when Grandma left to visit a neighbor, they were both into growing orchids and were going to move the plants to winterize. And when Grandpa left for the clinic, he had an appointment with an ophthalmologist. In the morning, Kate's mother suddenly knocked on Kate's room. "Daughter, we need to talk," she said. The overtone was calm, almost affectionate. But Kate had a feeling as if an unknown animal had slid across her back like a clean paw. It was a bad feeling. And then Kate walked into the hall and saw the look on her mother's face. Oh, she knew what was coming. "Daughter, how do you explain this?" asked Nancy and pointed at the smartphone and the texts Vanessa had sent her the day before. Kotia stretched out in a string. She folded her arms across her chest and pressed her lips together. What did she have to say about it? "Because I want to protect you," the girl blurted out, and then, unable to stand the fact that her head was spinning like tornadoes, a field tornado ripping through her head. "Because I can't watch you ruin yourself." "Did you call Benjamin?" asked Sam, standing in the supervisor's office. "I asked for no middle name, but it was Benjamin. Because I feel too solid, you know." "I understand, Benjamin." "Sorry, I won't do it again, round my eyes, Sam." And all I had to do was grin at him. What a weirdo, huh? He's not a small man, and he's not a teenager, but he acts like a kid, honestly. But actually, Benjamin Sam sympathized. It was weird. But sometimes he caught himself thinking that if he ever had a son, he would want him to be like Sam. Probably just as smart, good-natured, hardworking, talented. Yeah, it's an unfair world. Some bastards, alcoholics, throw their own child at the mercy of fate. And people who dream of children can't give birth to them. I'm talking about the pastry contest. Benjamin, thoughtfully tapping his pen on the table. I think Vanessa is right. She is a good cook, but not a pastry chef, and has never been good at desserts. Therefore, her candidacy to participate is canceled. I mean, that's what Sam said disappointedly. So Keezer's out. It was such a brilliant chance. There is a chance, Benjamin grinned. And teaser is in. You're just going to the contest. You what? I'm rounding my eyes, Sam. But Benjamin, I mean, it's impossible. The guy's got his hands up in the air. Why? Now Benjamin looked stern. You have a lot of experience. Not a bad education. There's experience in competitions. But there will be people like that out there, Sam objected. There's a chef from Adele's restaurant. He's in Michelin restaurants. Used to work in New York and London. And the coffee shop, they also have their own pastry shops all over the city, such people. The guy took a step back, like he was about to be dragged off to the pageant right now. Benjamin, don't. You're a smart guy, Sam sighed, co-owner Caesar. And remember, when you first became chef, you suggested introducing tiramisu, glossy cakes, and a chocolate fountain to the menu. We, of course, said no. After all, our profile is the most common home-cooked food, and not something you can't make at home. But we'd have to complicate the kitchen, and the price tag would be high. We have to stay the course. We're like a good canteen in terms of prices and assortment, but like a cafe in terms of service and atmosphere. But now, Sam, this is your chance. And you're a man who's accomplished so much, aren't you? Will you let him in? There was silence in the office for a few minutes. Everyone was thinking about something else. And then Sam looked up, clear-eyed. He had made his decision. Okay, Benjamin, just Benjamin. Okay, I agree, I'll do my best. But if I win, he added with a cheerful smile, we'll discuss again what we can include in our menu. Deal. Deal, Benjamin smiled back at him. Kate didn't realize that her mother was ruining herself right away, and even at first, she was happy about it. And how could she not be happy that her mother, who was already over 40, suddenly decided that she was still a woman who did not want to spend her life without love? Which meant she needed to find a man to be her soulmate. Nancy suddenly decided that her physical imperfections were no reason to give up her personal happiness. Kate was thrilled, but it wasn't that simple. At first, Nancy tried to find a suitable candidate for future husband among her entourage, friends, buddies, and colleagues. There wasn't much choice, but one man reciprocated. His name was Nick, and at first glance, he seemed quite decent. His home does not drink, divorced. But that's just the little things in life. Anything can happen. But then suddenly Nick borrowed money from Nancy. Then he borrowed again. She upgraded his car and bought him a huge plasma TV. Then Nick said he wanted to start his own business, and therefore needed more money. I may be a historian, said Kate's grandfather, but I'm not out of my mind yet to fall for his lies. I mean, it's a common Alfonso. Nancy at first defended her lover, but then, as soon as she canceled Nicholas' financing, he immediately showed his true colors. Nancy naturally cried. But then she decided one failure doesn't solve anything. And after a while, she met a new man. His name was Gosha, worked in the car service, and he earned obviously well, because he was a master of high class. And it seemed that with him you can definitely be behind a stone wall. But suddenly it turned out that he dreams of a child, and only to have a child, and that's it. And then you can do whatever you want, sweetheart. It turned out that Gosha was the founder of his own philosophy, according to which his genes are among the most valuable on planet Earth and should be spread everywhere. In the end, Gosha admitted that he had a dozen kids at least all over the country. He'd also confessed that sometimes he switched his girlfriend's pregnancy prevention pills for ordinary vitamins. Anyway, Nancy broke up with him, a little horrified, and for a couple more months, very disturbed. Because she was just taking the pills and she was afraid. Was she pregnant? Nancy's next man was Martin, a handsome man just under 30, whom they met when, as a cab driver, he drove Nancy and her daughter to the dental clinic. And as with previous beaux, Martin had turned out to be a surprise. He just believed in aliens. He believed that the Earth is secretly ruled by reptiles, and to protect themselves from them, you need to drink infusion, special from herbs and mushrooms, which he himself collected. But that wasn't the end of it. After parting with Martin, other men appeared in Nancy's life. A bandit, an alcoholic, and another type, who decided that when the kitten turned 18, she would also become his mistress. "And your mother's all right," winked the immature sleuth. "One day, Nancy." After that, by the way, Kate's grandmother drank heart drops for a long time. And grandfather threatened that Nancy should not be married off, but put in a madhouse as a spoilsport. "Who?" said Lisa. "Kate." "Grandma, what kind of spell?" "Mom just gets the wrong men. If this keeps happening, I don't know how we're going to live." Lisa said, "I don't know how we're going to live." A thorough family conversation took place, at which Nancy was persuaded with a chorus, "Stop trying men if you're not lucky." No love life. Well, that's just fate. What do you want? Father was telling young Nancy off like a fool. "We have a place to live. The apartment for Kate is bought, the house will be finished, and the young people will have their own corner. 2 cars, savings for a rainy day. You have a profession and a salary that makes me jealous. We fly to Europe every year. We live. We don't know what to do. Is it on the men? That's all right. Don't embarrass me. I'm not risking myself or my daughter anymore. No more dates. It's a deal." And for a while, Nancy went quiet. She seemed to have forgotten all about trying to make a life for herself. But then Kate noticed something was wrong with her mom. She visited a beauty salon, bought a new dress and boots, but most importantly, her eyes were shining in a special way. Then Kate realized Mom was in trouble again, and she decided to stump another nonsense just on the route, just to find out who Mom was messing with again. But there was no need to play detective. Everything was decided by chance. Just one day, Kate was called into the office of the owner of Keezer's to talk about the peculiarities of the working schedule. And it so happened that the door to the office was slightly open, and she heard Benjamin talking on the phone and a few phrases in which slipped special such information about life. The little girl realized that Benjamin was talking to her mom, and she was just shocked. What kind of a nasty coincidence was this? And she also realized that even though Benjamin seemed like a normal man, he was not at all like the others. But her mother is in trouble again because Benjamin is married. Vanessa made a very good impression on Kate, and the girl decided that she had to act, so she sent her a message from her second phone number, which was unknown at work. All her fears and worries accumulated in her heart. Kate spilled out in a stream of emotional speech, overdriven by tears, gesticulation, such that almost knocked off the nightstand collection of grandmother's porcelain shepherdess. And finally, Kate fell silent. The girl was breathing hard, as if she'd run 100 meters. "I've said everything," she finished in a colorless voice. Nancy's daughter was shocked by what she heard. Yes, she was well aware of how unsuccessful her attempts to find a man had been. And she had given up all plans for personal happiness. She had learned to get used to a lot of things in her life. First, she had gotten used to the fact that her parents had taken her away from this town to another, away from anything that would remind her of tragedy. But then, after Nancy's grandmother died, they had decided to return to this hometown, because it was once Nancy who had been particularly insistent on leaving. And now with her passing, that commitment was being canceled. "My daughter, my dear," my Nancy stepped toward her. And though Kate tried to dodge, suddenly she hugged her, pulling her to her, took her hair away from her wet face, and gently stroked her cheek. "It's all right, but my silly girl. Why didn't you say anything to me? Would you have listened to me?" clapped Kate. "You've been dragging things out with everyone to the last minute, till it got bad, and yet you shook your head. Nancy, we're all you and I'm grandparents. We've talked about everything. I realized that I guess it really wasn't fate. I guess I'm destined to spend the rest of my life alone. But honey, you've got it all wrong, Benjamin. I was really in love with him once," Nancy said thoughtfully, and tears welled up in her own eyes. And then she told Katya for the first time that she had once had feelings for Benjamin. But the silent one was timid and didn't even try to talk to him about it. And how it all ended, told neither he nor she, of course, was to blame for what happened, Nancy said. It was all my fault. Stupid I was. But now years later, I just wanted to tell him that I had let go of those feelings, that things had changed. We met and decided we were just going to be friends. And as for his wife, Nancy grinned. I didn't know what Vanessa was like now, did I? I was afraid she wouldn't approve. You know, they say it's impossible for a man and a woman to be friends. But it's not true. Maybe. Benjamin and I used to date. I don't deny it. But as friends, we'd walk around town, reminisce about our high school days. What's wrong with that? And what's in it for you, daughter? And what do I swear to you, daughter? To make you believe that there was nothing between us. If Kate had any strength left, she would have burst again. Now from the realization of what a stupid thing she'd done, how she'd essentially set her mother up by putting her in such a bad position in front of her ex-girlfriend. I believe you. Kate nodded. Mommy, I'm so sorry, please. I didn't mean to. Yes, I forgive you. Nancy waved her hand. After all, it would be weird and wonderful if you didn't do something stupid at your age. So we'll just consider it a supplement to your belated teenage rebellion. By the way, there's my life as a job. All right, Kate smiled through her nose. It's all good. There's a contest coming up. But it's unlikely we'll win. The competitors are just dragons. And then there's this guy. I like him. She lowered her eyes. Come on, Mom beckoned her. Sit down and tell me about it. Let's go to the kitchen. I think Grandma's famous berry pie is still there. We'll talk over tea. That day, Vanessa went to work like a hard labor. The mood was a nightmare. Not only did her parents again read tedious lectures about the fact that she should go to university and not work as a waitress, but the guy she met on the dating site turned out to be not the youngest businessman with a startup worth $1 million, but an ordinary guy who immediately admitted that he put his photo on the shots with expensive cars and resorts in Dubai in order to attract girls. You know the saying, he said, taking Emily to a cheap diner that served donuts and didn't even have decent coffee, just the simplest of instant packets. You meet people by their clothes. I don't know, Emily replied, squeamishly setting aside the greasy donut. What do you think? Who's gonna go out with you after that? Why not? He shrugged. I'm a regular, normal guy. I'm not an oligarch. I work in a factory. I live with my mother and grandmother. We have an apartment in a nice neighborhood. There's greenery all around, and in the winter we make snow towns in the yard. But why do you do it? Emily asked stubbornly. She was just curious. Yes, Nick shrugged again. The girls today are you know what kind of girls, but their demands are high. What to do? Well, I figured I'm a normal guy. I want to date someone like you. Beautiful, smart. Don't think I'm gonna spend my life just working in a factory. I mean, I'll be a foreman later on, like my father was. You're a fool. Emily laughed, and, having risen, has dropped on a plastic table a handful of change. I can pay for the treats myself. Yes, wait, Nick tried to grab her by the arm, but the girl shuffled aside her nose. Yeah, but you wouldn't give a normal guy a chance. If I was rich, I'd stay. Is a tight wallet all that matters to you? And she's so beautiful. I thought you had an inner beauty too. Yeah, but I poked you, Emily, and I got out of your coffee. And so it was time to go to the hated job again. And Vanessa was 20 years old, and she realized that she would be like that without education. She would be a saleswoman or a waitress. But Emily was not going to go to university to lose her young years there, so that then she could sit on low wages for years while others would live beautifully. However, here's Caesar. She was only earning seniority and experience. And then she was going to luxury restaurants to get a job where the crowd is more decent. And she'd definitely be able to pick up a wealthy man, although just last night she had an idea. And what is she waiting for when she already has a wealthy man, that is, the co-owner of Skeezers? Emily had had a good time studying him. He seemed to be a gentleman, which meant one that would be easy to spin. As for his wife, Emily could see perfectly well that Vanessa, despite her substantial income, looked like a shepherdess. Her hair has gray hair, her makeup the most inept. He is her even old man, the figure with age has floated. That is called. If she had that kind of money, Emily would definitely walk like a queen and in the fall would go not on the shuttle bus, but in a private car with a driver and not in a jacket. Simple went from which the figure as a barrel and in a fur coat mink or even lynx. So Emily decided, why not? She is young, beautiful, fresh, and knows how to behave with men. Benjamin, who is accustomed to his spouse a woman's pleasant dish, will definitely not resist. The main organizer of the contest for restaurants and cafes of the city was the restaurant White Swan. Many funds were spent on the preparation. And now the kitchen was ready to receive the participants. Everyone was going to allocate their workplace. The very presentation, dessert from the contestants, as well as their tasting by the jury were to take place in the main and most spacious banquet hall of the restaurant. And of course, the cream of society was invited to this event. Sam was shaking nervously at the mere thought of participating in all this, and he wondered 100 times a day whether it would be better to give it all up. But the boss's promise had already been made, and Sam's name was on the list of competing chefs representing their establishments. So the fact of the matter was that all we had to do was accept it. But that didn't stop me from being nervous. "Benjamin, excuse me, are you busy?" Emily slipped into the office. This day, Keezer's was closed to the public for the reason that there were workers working in the hall. Finally, it was decided to replace the light fixtures on the ceiling, as well as update it in general with decorative elements. To Benjamin's taste, however, it was unnecessary. After all, who goes to the cafe in the dining room to admire the ceiling? But since his wife insisted, he didn't mind giving in to her. Workers were hard at work in the hall. Chief Gennady remained in the institution. He'd volunteered to help keep an eye on the place. And Benjamin was getting ready. Today was the day, the pastry contest. He'd been so busy lately, he wasn't glad he'd gotten involved. And now he'd missed the first opening act of the event. Vanessa, who had wanted to go there, certainly together, had been patient with him and nervous. And he could even understand why. Because even though they had talked about everything thoroughly, and she seemed to believe that nothing had happened with Nancy, there was still some tension between them. And now they were almost fighting. In the end, Vanessa said, all right, so be it. She would go alone without her husband, even though it was such an important event. She left and told him to hurry up. Actually, I was just leaving, Benjamin said, turning away from the table where he was stacking the business papers he had to deal with tomorrow. Emily, it's not a work day, is it? What do you want? I know about the schedule. We're rearranging it again. It wasn't work that sang out. She came closer, and Benjamin stared at her perplexed. You see, I was going to confess to you. I was going to label you a beauty, who today wore her most seductive mini dress under her jacket, which was more like a sweater in length. And Emily, closely approaching Benjamin, talked about how spectacular, imposing man he is and how his powerful male energy is simply impossible to resist. I'm ready for anything she said in a voice that she thought sounded incredibly seductive, and bit her lip. Just tell me to do it. Emily. Benjamin, who was literally sandwiched between the insolent girl and his desk, a little panicked. He'd never had an adventure like this before. What are you doing? You're old enough to be my daughter. She replied that age is not important, and that she only dreams that an experienced, solid man will guide her and support her financially. So you, Benjamin, couldn't believe your ears. The thing was, he knew Alina's parents a little bit. They were decent people. And he couldn't believe their daughter could behave so ugly. Do you want to be my kept woman? Oh yes, exhaled Emily, rolled her eyes and pitched forward, now actually falling on Benjamin. And it was at that moment that the door to the study fell open and Vanessa walked in. She had come back because she had decided no, she could only go to such an important event with her beloved husband, her hope and support, without whose support Keezer would not exist at all. Vanessa had been thinking a lot in the last few days. She and Benjamin had overcome so much together for so long, and she realized she was ready to believe him after all. And Vanessa was going to tell him all that now. But now she felt like the room had run out of air. Her knees weakened. She was just shocked to see him with that girl. "Ah, so that's how you are then?" Vanessa exclaimed to the kept woman. "Well, that's to be expected, right?" Benjamin's favorite Benjamin pushed Emily away from her. "It's not what you think it is." Ah, that's how Vanessa squinted her eyes dangerously and swung angrily at him with her purse. Typical male excuse. "How are you?" "It's because she is." She looked at her rival squeamishly, "And yet with fear you decided not just to cheat on me. You're tired of having an inferior wife. You decided to have a baby on the side. I hate you." There were tears in her eyes, but Vanessa did not allow herself to develop. "That's it. You can do whatever you want. But today is a very important day for Caesar, and you're not going to ruin it for me." Having said that, Vanessa ran out of the office, ran through the hall, almost carrying a stepladder on which one of the workers was standing, and then ran out of the establishment. "What a fool you are." With squeamish regret, Benjamin looked at Emily. "You're fired." And he rushed after his wife. Emily pressed her lips together. This had not turned out the way she wanted it to. And she hadn't thought about the fact that this guy might even tell her parents. If he thought of such a thing. Emily sighed, cleaned herself up, and looking proudly in front of her, left the office. The girl was cautiously late. She heard a response. And the next moment she had already spun a large bucket of paint, which flooded her new suede boots. And then with chagrin and all, Emily just cried. Sam looked down at his hands, and also at the table where the ingredients lay, ready to be transformed into a magnificent dessert. And how scared was he? He was surrounded by professionals, pastry geniuses. What's he doing here anyway? He's a simple kid from an orphanage who doesn't even work in an elite restaurant, but in a cafeteria canteen. Sam thought for a long time about what to surprise the sophisticated public. He went through a lot of complicated dessert recipes, each of which could safely be called a work of confectionery art. But then he suddenly remembered the main condition of the contest was to prepare a dessert that the chef thought was the best. That is, that he personally thought was the best. And such a dessert was on Sam's mind. He tasted it for the first time in an orphanage. There worked one teacher. Her name was Nina, and she was a kind, but unfortunately childless woman who, not knowing the joys of motherhood, decided to devote herself to the care of poor children who were left without family warmth. And sometimes she treated the pupils to what she knew how to cook best: apple pie. Sam, like many orphans, adored candy, chocolate, and all kinds of sweets from the store. But nothing could compare to this pie with apples. And then, when he graduated from the orphanage, he continued to correspond, to call this nice woman. They maintained friendly relations, and he also asked her for the recipe for that apple pie. So he decided now, why not make it after all? The choice of recipe is his decision, and that's the only way the contest rules. And the fact that he's not as exquisitely refined as others, that's not his problem. He'll just make the dessert he thinks is best. But Sam decided to add a little something of his own, yes. Sam kept the same apple pie at the heart of the cloudy charlotte, with apple slices stacked on the bottom of the mold. But he complicated the recipe by adding hazelnuts and a little honey to the apple. And finally, to somehow decorate the dessert, Sam decided not only to sprinkle the finished pie with powdered sugar, but also to serve it with whipped cream. And once again in his mind, repeating all the steps, Sam resolutely set to work. Now his nothingness, even if an angry tiger suddenly appeared in the kitchen, could not distract Mom. "Thank you so much," Kate thanked him again. Nancy had made some useful connections over the years, and it was one of those connections that allowed her to get 2 invitations to this contest. But Nancy wasn't interested in that sort of thing. And she came here, of course, because her daughter wanted her to. She wanted to support the boy she was in love with. And on this occasion, by the way, Nancy decided to waive her own rules about not giving her daughter money. And together with her went to the store, where she paid for a very smartly colored holiday dress for the kitten. And now they were among the guests. "Mom, there are such delicious pills. And chocolate-covered strawberries." Kate had one bad domestic habit. She often tried to carry more in her hands than she could carry. She'd gotten caught a couple times at work, when she'd taken an order and instead of going to the kitchen to get it, she'd loaded one tray twice at a time. As a result, it flew to the floor, but after she was reprimanded in front of the whole team and deducted the cost of missing dishes from the salary, Kate so did not do so. But now for some reason again did so a girl hurried to her mother with a tray of delicious, and there were glasses of alcoholic fruit, cocktails, and when it was necessary to warm up. Kate failed to perform this maneuver, and as a result the contents under the nose flew on the floor and partially on the costume of this man. Oops, sorry, Kate was jumping around the injured man, offering paper napkins. Kate's daughter. How could you not be so neat? I apologize for her too. Nancy showed up. It's not worth the trouble. Mademoiselle Madame answered them in a strong foreign accent. A man. He looked to be about 45 years old. Black hair with a noble gray at the temples. A neat beard and mustache. Shrewd gray eyes and strong-willed facial features. He was dressed in a Kremlin and suit with a mottled silk tie, and in tone with it a silk handkerchief in his jacket pocket. And now on the light-colored fabric of the suit, with no glassy stains, blurred traces of the thick sauce based on cream cheese and tomatoes, which earlier had been crabbed in their baskets. I guess it's not so terrible, the man smiled, rejecting the offer to wash it all immediately. Really, ladies, I'm not worth your concern. I've had worse things happen to me. My hotel is almost an hour away, and I don't want to miss a minute of what's going to happen here. So he threw up his hands. Let's just consider it an eventuality, the usual course of life. May I? He pointed with his hand to the stage from which the contest organizers had already announced something important. I apologize, but I must leave you. I need to say a few words too. Who's that? Don't you know? Nancy casually asked thoughtfully as the man withdrew. It was very strange, but she suddenly felt something inexplicable. It wasn't like the silly romantic interest that had come over her when she'd met those other men, the ones she dreaded to think about now. I don't know, Kate shrugged, but he looks French. Your daughter was right to join the conversation. One of the guests of the evening is a lady in years in a black floor-length evening dress and a fur cape on her shoulders. His name is Antoine Defather. He is a legendary restaurant critic who has traveled the world to tell true foodies what is worthy of attention. The lady sighed admiringly. It's a pity he's about to end his career now. Really? Why? Kate asked. You see, the lady said eagerly. Antoine started out as a chef and only then changed his trade. Now he intends to open a French restaurant. Yes, by the way, let you not be deceived by his name and excellent knowledge of this language, although he was born in Paris, but his mother was from the USA. And now he has decided to return to his roots, came to us to travel and choose where to settle down. But he's a special guest of honor here, and it's even scary to imagine how much the organizers of all this paid for him to agree to take part in the jury and to give his opinion of the contestants. And if he speaks badly of Sam, I don't know what I'll do to him, Kate muttered. Vanessa, we need to talk. Benjamin was beginning to feel like he was out in the desert chasing circulation. Because ever since they'd come here, his wife had been slipping away from him. And while he could understand her, who would enjoy catching their other half in such an ambiguous situation? But right now, he still couldn't understand why she just couldn't stop and let him explain himself, as he had already done when she had caught him in Nancy's illusorily compromising society. Finally, he caught up with her. Vanessa stopped at one of the Greek-style columns, which in this room served more as decorative elements than actual supports. Vanessa stood with her arms folded across her chest. What do you want to talk about? Divorce? What? Honey, come on. Benjamin dropped his hands doomfully. He was ready to talk, but he counted on a calm, sober dialogue, not a monologue from his own side, in which all the words would be as if into the wall and bounce off the stubborn negative mood of the wife, her desire to close and her far-fetched resentment. Tell me how long this has been going on. But there was nothing, Benjamin replied. He looked her straight in the eye, and would have given anything in the world, it seemed, just so she could read in his eyes the confirmation that he wasn't lying. The first time was Nancy. We met as friends, talked. She said she wanted to talk to you too, but later. Remember what kind of friends we were? There was no other company like us at school back then. You see, Nancy, she was just afraid you'd take it the wrong way. So Vanessa feared correctly and looked away defiantly, but immediately turned her face back to him. Okay, that's taken care of. Are you just friends with this Elena too? No, Benjamin shook his head. But I could swear on anything you say that I didn't give her any reason to behave that way. But you yourself know that the other waitresses, the staff in general, have been complaining a little about her. That she's been acting a little too loose with the guests, like she's flirting with some of the men. We didn't pay attention to it, of course, but I think I know what she wanted. The other waitresses used to say that Emily dreamed of finding a rich husband and any patron at all. Quick, Vanessa grinned bitterly, so she decided to go for it. What a girl her lips can be. A smile touched her lips for the first time since the quarrel. And it put hope in Benjamin's heart, so she started it first. And you were just confused, but you were getting ready to fight back. When I came in like that, yes, it was like that, Benjamin exhaled. Vanessa, I can't prove to you that I'm not lying. All I can do is to be as honest with you as I have always been with you. And then it's up to you. But I love you, and I don't want any other woman in the whole world. Even if Vanessa had a hard time drowning, I can't bear you a child, Emily, or some other young girl. They could. You be a father. You know, a long time ago, when I was a kid, Benjamin said, I used to dream that I was a bird, and when I woke up, I felt so disappointed. I thought it was so unfair. But then I realized that not having wings is just part of life, part of the world I exist in. It's the same with fatherhood. I won't hide it. I've wished for it, and I continue to wish for it, and probably will for the rest of my life. But that doesn't mean I can give up on you. You're my favorite woman. You're my other half, Benjamin practically whispered. And that's the most important thing to me. Nancy had already prepared many words of reconciliation, but now they all seemed shallow and inappropriate for some reason. And so, taking her husband's hand and meeting his gaze, she said just a few words. I believe you and thank you for being with me. Sam hasn't felt so insecure since. What was there to say? He had never felt so insecure in his life. What was I going to do? I had to go on stage. This was what all the contestants were supposed to do, where they briefly talked about the institutions they represented and the visas they had chosen for the competition. Keezer's can't be called an extra-class establishment, Sam said of his place of business after announcing that he had made an apple pie. We don't have any celebrities coming in, whose autograph you can hang on the wall, and we don't do branded dishes. Our menus are designed to season in advance. We do not have banquet halls, and to us, I admit, do not go on romantic dates or celebrate birthdays and other holidays. But we do appreciate each and every one of our customers. They are so different. There are a lot of regulars. For example, we have a factory worker who comes to us. He's a father of 3 kids. He always takes 2 meat dishes from us. Can you imagine? But he never takes sweets. He says he can't eat a bite. If one eats it all, he won't share it with the kids. Such an amazing person. And Grandma Zina also comes to visit us. She's very old with a stick, but she shows up at our house regularly. How does she get her pension? She always asks the waitress to calculate in advance how much it will cost to eat. She speaks very cordial. She reminds us how in my youth as a girl I used to visit the canteen at the factory. And we always give her a cup of tea as a gift from the institution and a spoon or a sweet bun to it. We say it's for all regular customers, so she believes us. That's the kind of place we have. In general, I realize with my mind that I don't feel quite at ease here. Sam waved his hands, paused, and sympathetic laughter rang through the hall, but mostly without malice or snide remarks. And actually, I wouldn't risk participating. Yeah, well, my bosses sent me, so I'll give it a shot. And from here on out, let it be what it will be. And he left the stage. The exciting and most important moment came. Now the desserts were brought out one by one. Some, like Sam's apple pie, could be cut into slices, and others, if they were portioned, were made in several pieces at once. And now the desserts were on the tables. The audience froze. And the judges were concentrating on savoring the best delicacies from the city's top establishments. Hi, Sam said. He, noticing Kate in the hall, approached her. Hi, said the girl and introduced him to her mom. Are you nervous? asked Kate. No, Sam sighed. The main thing is not to win, but to participate. I'll gain experience and all that. And it's great. I'll brag about participating in such a contest. Why are you talking like you're not going to win? Pearl's got his hands up his sides. Kate, you can do it. If what you wish for could come true, Sam grinned. But thanks for the moral support. Finally, the objects of evaluation by the elite jury were eaten, and the secret voting began, after which the host took the stage. Today here were presented luxurious dishes, colorful and extraordinary, each of which, I'm not afraid to say it, could decorate the menu of any restaurant. But we, unfortunately, must choose only one, the best. And you know, when we just started voting, no one doubted, grinned the host. Who will win? A delicious chocolate fountain. It intertwines the classic traditions of this dessert and its original reading. An author's perspective. We all agreed that this would have been a fair choice on all counts. Well, that's what I thought. Sam lowered his gaze. Yeah, I'm not upset, he said to the wall, already ready to comfort him in every way possible. It's okay. That tough cook should win. But the next moment, when the presenter continued talking, Sam suddenly looked up at the stage in amazement. And the thing was that the host said that yes, the experienced jury members appreciated all the desserts, but there was one among them that impressed them especially, and it was a simple apple charlotte. I think many of us are familiar with this simple pie, which was prepared by our mothers, grandmothers, and aunts, said the host with a smile. It seems that every piece of it warmly resonates in the heart, and so we decided. We were going to judge the dessert fairly after all, which meant we had to take another vote. And so finally, the decision was almost made. The host paused for a spectacular pause and looked around at the breathless audience. Our guest of honor pondered the longest, our dear Antoine. Finally, he made his decision. And in the end, first place is awarded to apple pie. From Sam from Feasers. There was a round of applause and cheers. Sam rounded into a confused stare. Was this really happening to him? But go ahead. I gave him a gentle nudge in the back. Kate, did you deserve that? This is your victory. Let's go for it. Sam went on stage and accepted from the hands of the presenter the award of a gilded plate with a crystal actor, as well as a diploma and another check for a tidy sum as another prize. And now the guy truly realized that this was the happiest evening of his entire past, and so far, his life. And then he looked around the room and stopped at the picture. And suddenly he realized something important. And besides, we expect to cooperate, said the host and owner of the White Swan restaurant, smiling. And although it is not included in the rules of the contest, but I want to make you, Sam, special offers. How about selling this wonderful recipe? It could become the centerpiece of our establishment, a part of the list of dishes that make up, so to speak, its business card. That's a very generous offer, Sam replied. But I don't agree. First of all, I really hope this recipe shows up in Keezers. I think our guests will love it. And secondly, I'm thinking of recording a video of it and putting it online. Let people cook it. Let it be not only in the Café This Pie, but in every kitchen of those who want it. So you can write down the recipe. Shout it out from the audience. Some spectacular blonde in a red dress. How lovely, she continued. An attractive man who can cook. How can you resist? She joked and laughed. Finally, Sam was released from the stage. He received congratulations from all sides, including from the other contestants. And then he stayed a little longer at the celebration. It was necessary purely out of courtesy to talk to so many people. So Sam was not immediately able to approach the wall, and when he did, the girl met him with a frown. Congratulations, she muttered. You're a hot commodity, aren't you? She added sharply, clearly implying that he had just been chatting with a lady owner of a pastry shop, who all coquettishly unobtrusive and yet eloquently touched Sam, and clearly not jokingly asked for lessons in culinary skills, and also beckoned them to work. Yes, what a glory, Sam grinned. All right, squinted Kate. I'll go. Where to? The guy was surprised. Did I do something to offend you? No, it's all right, the girl answered so sharply that anyone would have realized that nothing was wrong with her. Wait a minute. Sam still wanted to say something important, but Kate ran away to the depths of the hall. And then, finding her mom there, told her that she wanted to go home because she had a headache. The next few days passed for Sam in a pleasant fog. He was still reliving the aftertaste of his victory, but there was something else that kept him busy, and he decided he had to act. "Hi," Kate said to him as she opened the door. It didn't surprise her that he knew her address. "I invited him to visit once, but Sam declined." "What's up? Did something happen at work?" "No," he answered and handed her a bouquet of pink rose lollipops. "These are for you," cute Kate said, and she looked like she'd been given a mop instead of flowers. "But not for nothing. I hate flowers." "Liar," Sam grinned. "Roses are your favorite. You said so yourself. All right, come on in." The girl stepped aside, letting him through. "Since you're here, we need to talk." "Yeah, we've talked 100 times. Kate's going to get some water in a vase." "What do you want? You know what I mean?" "No. Look, if I don't want to, I love you." How did she not drop the vase too? Her hands were weak as soon as she heard the cherished words, but instead she put the vase neatly on the table. Then she put the bouquet in it, and only then did she step toward the guy. She stood up and raised her head, meeting his gaze. "Say it again. I said I love you for real." How else could you say it? For a few minutes, they just stared at each other. Then Kate laughed happily and threw herself around his neck. "I also want you to marry me," Sam added. "You're quick." She smiled and kissed him for the first time herself. They would have said 1,000 more important words to each other. But at that moment, the doorbell rang. Kate, opening the door and seeing her mom, hurried to share her joy. "Mom, I'm getting married." "Oh, that's all I could do." To begin with, Nancy said, walking into the house. Standing behind her were Kate's grandparents. And here was someone else she hadn't expected to be here at all. "Antoine," Grandpa said sweetly. Just like that, out of the house for a little while. "I don't know what's going on here." "Who are you marrying?" "That's him." Kate grabbed her hand, looked out of the room indignant. "Sam, I told you about him." "I'm very happy for you, daughter," Nancy said. "That's just wonderful." Mom asked Kate, "What's wrong? Are you different? Let me get this straight." "Mademoiselle." Antoine stepped forward, and in the next few minutes it became clear that love at first sight had broken out between him and Nancy, and with such force that Antoine, having lived as a bachelor for the last almost 20 years, he suddenly decided not only to have an affair, but to marry Nancy. He gave her a diamond ring, and also to be serious and solid. Has already managed to get acquainted with her parents, and they approved such a candidate for a future son-in-law. Besides, Antoine decided that if he found a bride here, he would settle down in this town too. And here, as planned, we'll open a restaurant. That's great news for one day. That's right. Maybe my future son-in-law will even work in our family restaurant one day. What do you think? Sam was a little confused. He replied that he would think about it later. But for now, he was just happy. And he still had a lot to talk about with the cute picture. "Benjamin, I don't think we can do this," Vanessa said. They'd just gone over the estimates they prepared, and the pile of paperwork needed to open a second Caesar's Cafe for the umpteenth time. "I remember when we started, you said the same thing," grinned her husband. "Don't worry, we'll make it work." "All right," Vanessa sighed. "I trust you." They were silent for a while, immersed in studying the documentation. "Benjamin, we need to talk, and this can't wait." He rubbed his eyes tiredly with his fingers. "It would be good to get it done today. We have to pick a place to rent tomorrow." "Since when is work more important to you than your wife and family?" Vanessa frowned. Benjamin blinks confusedly. "Honey, are you offended?" "It's just that this is important to you and me." "And no, of course it's not more important to me. But just tell me what's going on. You haven't been the same lately." "What's the same, but a little cranky?" He grinned at Archie. "Do you have a lot of mood swings? You used to be a whirlwind, but now you're tired all the time." "I'm already worried. Are you sick?" "No, I'm healthy," Vanessa replied. "But something is really going on with me. But I didn't know how to talk to you about it. I thought we trusted each other. You just told me yourself. So what's going on with you?" "Remember when you said that all change has its time, and sometimes something new can hurt. I remember, Benjamin nodded. That's what I said when you offered to buy a cottage. But you see, you and I don't have enough time for it, and it will be overgrown with weeds. Benjamin, I didn't mean the cottage. Vanessa started pacing nervously around the room. Then she stopped and either laughed or sobbed. I just don't know how to tell you to believe it. But I've been to several doctors already, and they confirmed it. Doctors. So you were sick after all. Benjamin jumped up, walked over to his wife, and wrapped his arms around her. We'll get through this. Trust me. Of course we will. Quietly poked Vanessa. In about 7 months. Why is Benjamin confused about 7 months? What are you talking about? How confused are you? Think about it. Vanessa lowered her eyes. It's just that I've been pregnant for 2 months. So that makes it 7 more to go. Pregnant. Benjamin could hardly believe his ears. But we were told. The doctor said that sometimes there are changes in a person's body. Well, it was a small possibility. But it did happen. Benjamin, aren't you glad? I forgive you for saying mean things about me. It's just that you're pregnant and therefore a little nervous. He hugged her even tighter and kissed her. No, I'm glad. I'm happy. This is the most wonderful thing that could have happened to us.